In this video, you will learn a lot about Blender, from modeling, texturing, lighting, simulations and even geometry nodes, and everything is on a beginner level. Recently I made a video for Fiverr where I hired 2 3D artists to make animations for this headphone. So if you're ready to level up your skills in Blender, then you definitely want to watch this short series. You'll make a slow animation, a cloth simulation, and also ways to animate a complex object with multiple empties. This mini course takes less than 3 hours and can probably be finished within 1 or 2 days. I recommend giving it a special twist of your own, using the newfound skills that you've learned, and for now I'll show you the shots that we will be recreating. That's it, and if you want to create some other animations, then I highly recommend getting inspired from the Fiverr video, which will be the first video of this course. This entire series has chapters that you can skip into, so if you don't want to do the modeling and texturing, you can actually get the headphones for free on Gumroad. But if you're still a beginner, I highly recommend actually following along, because I'm going to explain step by step how the model is created and how you can texture using some advanced techniques. So I actually recommend following the modeling and texturing because that's where you will learn a lot. Now, without further ado, let's get started. I hired 2 3D artists to make the same animation. One of them got this rock song and the other one got this classical song. And in the end, I also animated the product myself in order to function as glue between the two. I was lucky enough to get this video sponsored by the amazing team at Fiverr. They were also kind enough to give me a budget to hire these artists. So the first thing I had to do was assemble an amazing team of 3D artists. So I went onto the Fiverr website and find my guys. So first up, Vlad. He looks like he's doing 3D with one hand while wrestling grizzly bears with the other. He seemed cold at first, but he's actually a very nice guy. Then there's Rakib from Bangladesh. Super polite, super motivated. The guy started before I even finished my sentence. It's done. But I haven't even sent the model. It's done. What a legend. Now the only problem is, they don't have a model to do the animation with. And since this is a music-driven video, I decided to make headphones. So this is going to be a product where sound and matching the visuals really matters. If we destructure the object and look at its individual components, we can simply see that it consists of several circular parts. And now that we've reverse engineered what parts it consists of, we can put it back together until we have the final model. I sent it to both artists along with the songs. And then... The texture is wrong. Texture. You call this a texture?
Hi Blender Render. I'm already working on the project.
Alright, we're doing great, so it seems.
3 days later.
Coincidentally, no joke, they both delivered on the same day at the same time. And me, during that time, well... yeah, I wasn't done. So I decided to pitch in too. I made a couple of shots, like this speaker bouncing on the water. It's not mathematically perfect, but it's good enough. Then I added some color switches with rotations, some cool transitions. One of those colorful renders I definitely didn't steal from a JBL commercial itself. Welcome to the real world. The goal was to connect all the styles with a coherent visual flow. This is actually nothing but a wave texture that is being animated. So if we play around with the phase offset, it's simply a wave going outwards. And the way you do that is by setting this to rings instead of bands, and then it will pretty much work automatically. We instance some points on this mesh, and now we have some of those UV spheres that are going up and down while the headphones is doing its animation. So that's the first one, and this is basically the setup. It's just a giant pink plane with some cubes in order to make it look a bit more dynamic instead of just having this entire part rotate the entire time. We also have an animation for this. And basically the way this works, this cloth simulation, it's very simple. So a couple of these vertices are connected to this sphere. We get some pretty light type, pretty cool looking cloth animation. This is basically just a caustics on a glass plane. So this was pretty hard to render, by the way. Intense and cinematic. Anyway, that's the way it works. So I finished my job now as well. Alright, so now we've arrived at the point where we're going to look at some awesome renders. Starting out with Vlad. I do like that it is congruent, so the headphones are turning this way and it will keep on turning, and we also have this one turning that way. I think that's pretty nice. I'm not entirely sure what I think of this color setup, like the pink with the blue and this dark blue. It seems a bit like it's not JBL, but I might be wrong. I do like the considerable effort that went into texturing all of these models separately. This is smooth. Yeah, I like this. It's just nice motion. I like the top view. Alright Flood, awesome job. I really like the creativity in this, the adding of different colors, keeping consistent motion throughout different shots. So now let's have a look at Rakib's animation. Alright, I really like the consistency in this, so the background is the same color all throughout. We have some pretty nice lighting effects in the logo and going around here, and it's pretty smooth and slow. We've got a cool explosion animation going on. We've got some movement of the headphones, making sure that he used everything that was available. It's going fast in the beginning, slow in the middle, fast at the end, and then we are keeping that same structure throughout every single shot. So as you can see, and then we are transitioning into a different shot, fast, bam, new shot, fast, slow, and then we are transitioning smoothly. We have some nice logo and lighting animations and a smooth transition to the JBL logo at the end as well. So there was a nice little touch right there. I think I'm going to finish the video like that. We had some weird lighting artifact right over here. Not entirely sure what it is, but it's pretty dark here, and then it's going through the light and you can see that switch. You did a great job with this, Rakib. I'm quite happy with the result, so let's move on to the next stage. Big shout out to Vlad and Rakib, they both crushed it. And also thanks to Fiverr for sponsoring this video. Fiverr is a platform where people sell their services and help you grow your business. So you can either start your business on Fiverr or grow your existing business by using the services that other people provide on that platform. If you want to make use of these fantastic services that Fiverr has to offer, click on the link in the description or in the comments. So it's time to do some editing in DaVinci Resolve. So right now I'm having a lot of trouble with the edit, and I'm starting to have my doubts whether this will even work out or not. And I know this may seem like a standard script writing thing in YouTube where, oh no, this is the moment of despair and everything is going to fail. I actually had this moment yesterday night. I actually just wanted to be a chill guy because I know that a lot of 3D artists are under a lot of pressure, and when you have to do a lot of revisions and things like that, it's not fun. Should have been more strict with the requirements and the way I wanted things to flow. Let's do some editing. Alright, so I just finished the editing and I actually believe it came out quite well. Remember moments ago when I was in despair? And I'm starting to have my doubts whether this will even work out or not. I actually edited this right now and I think it looks pretty cool. I used some different music, made some more effects and added some text in some places here and there. And I think it came out pretty good. So the lesson here is there's always a solution, and most of the times it comes down to working extra hard. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Let me know in the comments which renders you think were the best and if you think this cooperation was a success. 3, 2, 1, let's go. So today we are going to model this headphone, and as you know, this headphone was used in the Fiverr video which I uploaded a week ago. You've probably already seen it. If not, place it in your watch later and come back to this video to model some headphones. So let's get started straight away. I've already deleted the cube and I'm going to bring in a mesh circle, and we don't want it to be 32, we want it to be 16. Should be a lot less. I'm going to click on dot and this is going to be our circle. Now, the way I'm going to be modeling this is on the RY90, so that when I press 3, it is in the front. And as always, we work with reference, which I'm going to bring in right now. So I'm going to press Shift A, image, reference. I brought in the reference, which you can get on Patreon for free, obviously, and I'm going to bring it somewhere in the back so that we can see it at all times. Now, modeling it according to the reference is going to be quite hard. We don't actually want to go over here, press on 1, and rotate this to the side, bring it over here and try to manipulate it in such a fashion so that it looks like this headphone. That's going to be a lot of hassle and constantly working with normals, which is going to increase the amount of times clicked, and we are going to reduce that amount. So this is actually what we are going to start out with, and it's very simple. We're going into edit mode, click on 1 in order to show these vertices, and I'm going to press E and X, and it will bring it out towards this side. And the first one should be very thin, something like this, and then we're going to press E and X and we'll make the next layer. If I look at the reference, which I'm going to bring a little bit closer, we can see that there is a line right here. But there's also a sharp crease somewhere around this area. And we want to make sure to emulate that. So in order to get that done, I will place one extra loop cut right here. So now we have our thin area, which is going to be this area. And then we've got this area right here, which is going to be this little part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press on 3 and I will press on Alt Z so that we can see through it. I will click on 3 and I will select all of these. As you can see, we have exactly half selected, but we don't want this entire area to be selected because it is connected, as you can see right here, to the bottom part. This top part is a bit more loose. So I'm going to click on P in order to separate the selection. And now this part is separated from this part. I believe this can be a little bit thicker. G and X, like so. Now I'm going to give this a subdivision by clicking Ctrl 3, and now we already get some idea of what the shape is going to look like. So right now we have to make this area, and this area is sloped. So I'm going to select this part, this part, this part, and this part. If I click on 7, you can see 2 are underneath the red line and 2 are above the red line. I'm going to press on E, Z and bring it upwards. S, Z, 0, S, Y, and move it inwards until we get that general shape. This is what it looks like right now. When it comes to this part, right here, right now it would be very nice if we can remove all of this and simply give it this shape right here. So what I'm going to do is click on this little button right here, which allows it to auto merge vertices. If we have this one selected and press on G and G, then once we reach this end, there will no longer be 2 vertices. It will just be 1 because they were deleted automatically. Now let's have a look at this. This is starting to look like the general shape that we're trying to achieve, but there is no sloping motion right here. So what we should do is add a loop cut. But before we do that, let's go over here and delete this interior, X faces. Now we have the part we need. Let's add 2 loop cuts. Let's select this area and this area. Shift S, cursor to selected. I will select those lines right here. Or actually, I'm just going to select this entire inner line by holding Alt, set this to 3D cursor, SX, and scale this inwards. I'm going to do this in a very careful manner. Now select those 2 vertices. Cursor to selected. Let's select this line, S and X. And let's make sure that we have that general shape. We have got that shape right now. S and Y. Let's select this line as well, S and Y. And let's make sure that we get that shape in a fashion that's correct. I think it can be brought down a little bit lower. So if we select all of these, G and Z, perhaps it makes a bit more sense we do it like this. Now I'm going to bring in a solidify modifier real quickly in order to see how it actually looks. And I will bring it inwards, which is my preferred method. And I will bring it above the subdivision as well. Very good. Now I'm going to do the same for this one. Solidify, Let's drag it on top of the subdivision. And now we have a mesh that looks like this. Very cool. If we add some extra geometry, we can already see how the shape is going to work out. So right now, as we are noticing, there is a sharp edge right here and it's flowing over into this circular part, or at least so it seems. So I'm going to press Ctrl R right here. I'm going to press SX0 and make sure that we have median point instead of the 3D cursor. And I'm going to press G and X and bring that line all the way over here. Now that's starting to look good, and later on we're going to remove the solidifier and we're actually going to give it some geometry ourselves. But for now this is working out perfectly fine. So let's turn the solidify off for both of these right now. And this is what it looks like, starting to head into the right direction. Now I am going to select both of these and I will go into edit mode. I will select this one and this one. I will press Shift D, click B, separate selection. And now we've got a separate two lines right here. I'm going to press A and Ctrl J in edit mode. Right now we have two vertices right here and that is not really connected. So I'm going to select both of these. Make sure to press Alt C, otherwise you'll only be able to select just one. I'm going to press M, merge at center, and I will do the same for this area right here. Cool. Press out of Alt C. Let's go to Object, set Origin, Origin to Geometry, and let's scale this down. And then I will go into Edit mode. Let's press on 1, let's select all, let's press E and X, and let's bring it outwards until we reach a part like this. Maybe somewhere over here, because this is going to be the inner area within this cushion. It doesn't have to go that far, maybe somewhere over here is fine. Then I will select it once again over here. G and X shouldn't really be sticking out on this side from what I'm noticing. So I'm simply going to press E and S, E and S, E and S, E and S, E and S. Make sure that all of these squares are approximately the same size. Let's keep it egalitarian, E and S. And right here, grid fill. Grid fill. Let's shade this smooth, very good. Let's go over to the other side, select this. And instead of doing all of this again, we can also place a loop cut in the middle. Let's go over here, select all of this, delete the faces, go to the modifier stack, add a mirror modifier. Let's place it all the way on top. And when we apply this, it is not working out simply because the origin point is right over here. So I will simply go over here, select this line, press Shift S, cursor to selected, and that will place the cursor exactly in the middle. Then I will go back to object mode, object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. And now the Z axis is actually doing its thing and working out. I'm not sure if you're having the same type of trouble, but if you do, Control A, all transforms, and then set it to X. And then it should work out. But right now, since I applied the transforms, the geometry origin point removed itself. So object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. And that should solve all the problems. I'm going to press Ctrl A to apply the mirror modifier. So now we have this right here. Not bad. I will simply select the middle 4 faces. Ctrl plus, and now we have this area. I'm going to press on O in order to enable proportional editing. G and X. Let's bring this out ever so slightly in a coherent fashion so we get that inner headphone type shape, something like this. Shading looks correct, so I'm simply going to keep it like this. So next up we have to figure out a way in order to get this little area right there, and it's not a very simple area, and there's something very important that you should not forget when you try to do this, because the first time I did it I kind of messed up, which is why I had to film this video all over again. But we're not going to say that. I am a perfect human being and I make no mistakes. Cool. Once we're completely happy with this, I highly recommend selecting all of this and duplicating it, placing it in a backup collection. And I will turn this off. Cool. So this was the easy part. Now we're going to do the hard part. This part is the hard part. Right over here, all of this is pretty doable. So let's go over here and I will go into edit mode. I will select this edge right here all the way until this edge, and then I will press Shift S, cursor to selected, we get the cursor right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a circle right over there. It's going to be a little bit big, but it's not a problem. Let's click on 7 and And we want to make sure that these vertices align perfectly because this is the exact middle point. So let's zoom in and let's do our best in order to get the greatest result that we can achieve. So scale this down, hold shift and make sure that it's perfectly aligned like this. Very good. Now I'm going to select this entire area, holding Control X, delete the edges. And then I will take this part by pressing L and I will leave this exactly where it is. But there's a slight caveat right here. I'm going to select this entire area as well. And watch what happens if we now click on the spin tool, for example, which is right here. We're going to use that later. I just want to do something for an example. If you make this part too thick, then your headphone will be too thick. Is make sure that this size right here is sensible for the rest of the model. So I'm going to click on this area, Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's click on this entire curve, set this to 3D cursor, S and X. And let's bring it inwards just a little bit so it becomes a bit more thin and more like the shape of this headphone, if you get what I'm saying. Now I'm going to Shift D this entire line, Shift D, I'm going to bring it down. And right here, we have some other vertices. I hope you can see this quite clearly. We are still scaling from the 3D cursor, but we should update that. Let's select this and this line, which is on the same height. Shift S, cursor to selected. Then I will select this line and I will click on scale until we reach this line right here. All right, it seems like it should be brought up just a little bit. So let's zoom in real deep and get this as good as humanly possible, like this. Very good. And now both of these should be aligned, but this doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm going to click scale until it is the case, like this. There you go. Very good. Then, before we actually start connecting all of these things, I'm going to select this first and search for bridge edge loops. And now if we bridge these edge loops, we actually have this area. But of course, it needs to be connected to the main part. So let's do that. Let's click on this vertex and that vertex, merge at the first. I'm going to take this area as the guide. Then right here, merge at first. This one and that one merge at last in this case. And let's select this one and that one merge at last in this case. All right, so we have something weird going on right here. And I believe the problem is with this little line. So I'm going to select all of this and delete the faces. And this line should probably be removed as well. So let's shade this smooth. We have a problem right here. Now, what could be the problem? Let's have a look at this and check the face orientation. Aha, well, it seems like we have some inverted faces right there. So let's select all of this and press Shift N. And now all the faces should be moved to the correct side. Let's do the same for this one now that we're in this mode anyways. So Shift N and that will invert the normals like that and correct them automatically. So let's go over here again, face orientation, and now all the shading issues are gone. This is what it looks like with a solidify modifier, but I feel like this might be a bit too big. And the way to check is to see how far this actually goes. If we have our line right here, that's that line. This is barely sticking out over this line, okay? So I'm going to select this entire inner area, cursor to selected. Then I will select that entire area. Let's select just a little bit more. S and X, like this. And just keep going until what you see makes sense. And trust me, once you do this, the next step will be a lot easier as well. Because if we place a line right there and make this headphones, it should be pretty thin. If it's not, then you did something wrong. If this is too thick, for example, it will look cartoony and weird. You don't want that, okay? So make sure to double check this a couple of times before you go on to the next stage. And if we look at it right now, I think mine is a bit too thin. So I was probably scaring myself a bit too much about the previous model and it should be a bit thicker. So I'm going to solve that problem right now. Select this area, Shift S, cursor to selected. Then I will select this entire area, set it to 3D cursor. Let's scale this upwards just a little bit. Then let's select the under area. So this side, Shift S, cursor to selected. And then I will select this side, SX. Make sure that this is straight. So something like this. And to be honest, we can also take a look at this one for a reference. This is probably the way this line should look. So if we select this area, for example, then you don't want this to be too much skewed. You don't want it to be stretched out. It should probably still remain a bit more straight, just so you know. So something like this. And while we're at it, let's select this vertex, Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's select this line area once again. So hold Control, select this entire area. R and, oh, we actually pressed E. R and Y. And let's bring this up. And then let's have a look at why this is so skewed. So let's press Scale again to make it straight, until we get this area that looks a bit more like the reference, because it is going upwards, right? Something like this. Pretty cool. Now let's give it another test shot. So press on 1, let's place the 3D cursor like somewhere over here. Let's do this, and that seems like the correct thickness for this headphone model. If I place this to the side, yeah, this makes a bit more sense. Cool. So make sure you get that area right. It's very important. Otherwise, the rest of the model will not work out. And we are getting some shading artifacts right here. And that is because it has scaled itself a little bit towards the inside. I'm not sure where things went wrong, but we can fix it simply by selecting those vertices and scaling it outwards until we have solved this problem. And it's following along with this line again nicely. One other thing I'm noticing is that this might not be entirely straight anymore. So I'm simply going to select all of this, SX0, and make sure that it is straight. So I'm also going to do the same for this line, which I'm going to select like this, SX0, and that did change something. And that made it straight, and we no longer have any shading artifacts going on. So for this area, I'm simply going to select this entire outer ring. I will press Ctrl B, and I will bevel this and give it 1, 2, 3, or maybe 4 of these bevel divisions. And now it's pretty cool and straight looking. I'm going to do the same for this area. So now that looks pretty cool and supreme. But as you can see, this part right here is still going down a little bit more. So we have to enter into this area. So we have to enter into this model. And I will first select this part and that part. And I will GG it all the way down until we get to the same type of curvature that is going on right here. I hope you can see what I mean. Then I will select both of these vertices, G and Z, and bring it down as well so that it follows this line correctly, until we get to a point where we're like, okay, this is starting to look exactly like this shape. And I think we achieved it right now. So before we continue, let's first select all of this again, Shift D, Y, bring it over there, and place it in the backup collection. All right, so now let's turn off the solidify modifier, and let's actually remove it. Let's go into edit mode, select everything, and then I will press Alt E, and in this case bring it outwards, because if we bring it outwards, things will not get messed up right here, because if we bring it inwards, well, it's not working out. So we have to bring it outwards, something like this. Make sure you're reasonable with the size. We can always scale it down a little bit with Alt S. So let's select this entire ring, and that one as well. So let's select this and this, that and that, this area and that area, then right here and right there. And I believe we should have everything on the outside. So there's nothing on the inside, only on the outside that we've selected. Control B, and now we will have a pretty cool, well-rounded off model without any issues. We're going to do the same for this area later on, but for now let's keep it simple. Let's select all of this as Z0. Let's make sure it's straight. And let's select this inner area S and Y. Let's bring it a bit more into its place, like so. Cool, we have to do that later on because if we bevel it now, it will be destroyed. So right now we are going to make the bottom side. We have just finished this top part and it's starting to look pretty good. If we place this right over here, for example, real quickly, let's make it something like this, scale it down a bit to make it a bit more sensible. This is aligning quite well, and if we now, let's say, do this and make our little spin tool, this is going to work out. I hope you can see that as well. This is going to take some fiddling around, by the way. But we can see that this is going into the right direction. This is starting to look like a headphone. That's pretty good. We are not going to give this thickness just yet. We are simply going to leave it like this because we need to make some holes and we don't want to make holes on two sides. So what I'm going to do first, I will select this line right here. Why? Because we have this harsh crease in the model itself. I'm not sure if you're able to see that, but I can see it and I'm going to guide you through it step by step. So I'm going to press Shift E and this will make it harsh. But if we look at this, not that much changed because the angle of this is not big enough for the crease to take effect. So let's make sure that we have this inner area selected. Turn off proportional editing. Let's make sure that we're on median point and scale it down ever so slightly. Not too much, just a little bit is enough. And as you can see, we already have this cool looking crease that otherwise we would not have. We're going into this mode and we have to make some holes. Now you can already think about how we're going to do that. We are not going to use a boolean. If you use a boolean, I'm going to do that real quickly. Let's just grab a UV sphere. Let's grab this modifier and let's apply it. Then you'll be able to see that whenever we make a hole like this, it's going to be a mess. So we're not going to do that at all. We're going to delete this and we're going to add some geometry. We want to make sure that all of these lines are the same size. Now these are pretty long and I would have recommended myself, if I could do this earlier on, to have squares like this. But when we add those right now, it's kind of messing up our mesh. So we cannot do that and we have to come up with a different solution. Not a problem, because modeling is actually coming up with solutions, spatial solutions, the entire time. And it would be very nice if everything and every move you did was correct at the first time, but it's not. So you have to learn to solve problems in modeling so that you can make better models over and over again. And when you encounter problems, you are able to solve them each and every single time because it's the problem solving skill that really matters in the modeling and not using extrude, rotate or scale because you knew how to do that after your first donut tutorial. Those were a lot of words, but I'm now going to add a couple of loop cuts and I want to make sure that these are approximately the same size, and that's what we've got right here. Now, before we actually continue, let's take all of this and new backup, new collection, call it backup 3 in my case. I messed around with it a bit. And now we have this part and I will simply go to the solidify and remove it. Then I will go to the subdivision, set it to 1 and apply it. You need to be in object mode for this, by the way. The easiest thing would be to have a look at where these buttons are located. I think somewhere over here. I'm just going to roll with this. So let's select this, trying to interpret this by eye. I feel like it's going almost to the middle, but just not yet. So let's go ahead and select all of these parts like so. And we want to make sure that we have an even amount of faces. So those are 5. That's not good. We want to have 4 or 6. So I'm going to add this one as well, because now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if we count from the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which means that this vertex is in the middle. So now that we got this area selected, I'm simply going to press I, and perhaps I want to scale it down on the x-axis a little bit as well. We now have an area that we can work with. I think the buttons will be approximately this thick. So what I'm going to do is I will press on 1 and I will select the middle vertex right here, cursor to selected. And why am I doing this? Well, let's have a look. Our line here, our edge, is moving diagonally, which means that this line here is also moving diagonally. What does this mean? Well, logical consequence is that our button is going to move diagonally. Now, this is going to be weird. Nobody makes those buttons diagonally. They are probably some standardized shape with a circular form that is going to be placed right in here. And if we are doing this in any other method, it is going to look fine. I wouldn't actually be mad at you if you would try to do it in a different method, such as selecting all of this. Let's do that real quickly. And deleting all of these faces and selecting this and using the smooth tool, and then you would have something that looks a bit more circular. And then you have this part, you add a grid fill, you use this as the button, like so. You will probably make sure that it's disconnected from the other area. And this would look fine for the button if you want to do something like this. But I think we can achieve a higher level instead of only doing that. We are going to make it a little bit better, and I'm also going to teach you a new technique that will improve your skills. All right, so we have placed our 3D cursor right here, and I will now bring in a circle. The circle will be scaled down, RX 90, and I'm going to make sure that the top vertex is exactly on this 3D cursor. And we can be as precise with this as we want. I like to be precise. So something like this. Very cool. Now we're going to set this to 3D cursor. We can scale it down. Let's have a look. Let's go into edit mode for this one as well. Let's select only this circle. And we want to make sure that the circle fits into this area, like so. And it does. So now let's help the mesh a little bit by rotating it, and do make sure that this vertex is exactly on the other one, okay? And I want you to think for a second. This object has a curve, it has curvature, but this circle is flat. We simply rotated it, it doesn't have curvature. So how can we make sure that this circle is following the curvature of the original model? I'm going to give you a hint, there's a modifier for it. Think about it for a second. All right, so I hope you got it, and if you don't, no problem, I'm going to tell you right now, you'll never forget. It is the shrink wrap modifier. So we're going to add a modifier, shrink wrap, and especially for curving objects, this is a perfect modifier, because working with curves is one of the hardest things in modeling that you can do, because we are working with different normals and all of those complications that make our life harder. But I'm simply going to select the picker tool, select the original object, and right now you saw something happen with our circle, and the circle is now actually following the curvature quite well of this object. And I'm immediately going to apply it as well, by the way. I will add both of these together by Control J, and then I will select the circle, go over here, press L, I'm going to press Shift D. Let's just take it out here, P, separate the selection, and now we get a new one. So I'm going to the bottom side of this button, Shift S, cursor to selected, and I will take this circle, Shift S, selection to cursor, loop tools, flatten, and now we have a normal circle again. Going to object, set origin, origin to geometry, Shift S, selection to cursor, and now we have to make sure that this area once again is placed on the 3D cursor. And let's place this circle on the 3D cursor, and let's make a new circle because I think this one is a bit messed up. RX 90, simply going to scale it down until it is the same size as the other circle. I'm going to place it right there, scale it down, and now I'm quite certain that it's the exact same size as the previous one. Let's delete it. Now we get this one, RX, and rotate it to help it along a little bit. Add a shrink wrap modifier. Let's select the original mesh, and let's apply it as well, and let's add this to the mesh. Cool. We are going over here. I will select this entire inner area that we made before. And delete it. Great. Click on 1. I think we accidentally brought in a circle with 32. I'm going to press on L, and now we only have this circle. Select, and then checker deselect, and make sure that we keep the ones that are important and dissolve those vertices. So that should probably work out. We have one there, we have one there, we have one over there, and then basically we are lacking this one, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. That one first, then the circle, M, merge at last. Let's merge this at last. Merge this at last. Oh, we got a wrong one. Merge at last. Merge at last. Let's take this, merge at last, merge at last. merge at last, and then we will select all of this and delete those vertices. Very good. Now we can perhaps select this area and scale it outwards just a little bit, something like this. So this line is a bit more straight, and that seems like a perfect circle to me, which means that we were successful. Let's do the same over here. So let's first select this circle, go over to select, checker deselect, make sure that we have the right one. If you do not have the right one, by the way, you can select this button right here and that will offset it. So that's just a little something that you can do. X, dissolve the vertices, and now we're going to do the exact same trick. We already know it works, so why change the winning team, right? M, merge at last. Cool. Let's do the same for this one. Merge at last. Merge at last. Merge at last. M, merge at last, merge at last, and merge at, misclick, merge at last. Cool, cool, cool. Then we're going to select the rest of the circle, delete it, we don't need it. I will select those edges right here, S and X, and make sure that the line is straight. Awesome. So this is what it looks like. I think this is perfect. There are no shading issues. And it's a perfect circular form, which is exactly what we needed for this button. So let's finish the button then. Let's place this in a backup. This was a hard part, it's not that hard, but we don't want to mess things up and do this again. It's a very time-consuming part. I'm going to place this in the backup once again. Cool. Then I will go over here, and now it's time to make some circles, I guess. So I will probably make one right over there. But there is a problem. Oh, there are always problems, aren't there, people? Aren't we just elaborate problem-solving machines? If we now try to make a circle here, delete the faces, well, this doesn't look like a circle now, does it? And if we try to smooth it out, still doesn't look like a circle. And if we try to scale it, our entire existence is going to be destroyed. It's going to be something like this. And well, that shading is messed up. We're not going to do that. We are not going to follow this method. Why does this occur, by the way? So here's some theory time. This is a shape that's not a natural square. Let me show you what I mean. I will bring in a plane. I'll bring in a plane right here. I will give it some geometry and I will make sure that they are all squares. Like this. And if I now select this inner area, and if I now turn this into a circle using loop tools, we get a perfect circle on the first try. But if I now bring in a plane, and let's say the plane doesn't have equal squares. Let's say it looks like this, and I will select it, make sure we have a little bit more. I'm going to press I. Loop tools, circle, okay. So now we're starting to run into problems. It's not understanding the math on how to place the circle. We still did get a good circle, thank you loop tools, but it didn't go as smooth as this one. And the reason for it is because it's trying to interpret it from different line lengths, which makes it harder for the circle to understand what's going on. Not that circles can think, but we can, and we know that these circles are trying to plot against us. This is the reason why using squares that are equal on all sides is usually the best way to go. Now, we didn't do it right here, either because we are stupid, especially you, because I know what I'm doing. I just want to solve problems with you. You could have done this way easier, but well, that's just your fault, not mine. So we have some weird looking shapes right here, and we still have to make sure that this is a circle. How we're going to do it? It's actually simpler than you might think. So right here in the middle, I'm going to press Shift S, cursor to selected, and I think it's the wrong area actually. We want to do it right over here, or maybe one higher, maybe this one. Shift S, cursor to selected, and let's bring in a new circle. Shift A, mesh, circle. We've got a circle now, RX90. Let's scale it, let's rotate it, help it along a little bit. Let's add a shrink wrap modifier. Let's select the surface point. We've got a circle on this area right now. This is way too big, so I'm going to scale it down until we get the circle type shape that we actually need. So this one is a little bit bigger, something like this should be fine. I think it's an on button. Shift D, C, let's bring this over there as well and scale it down because we have a smaller one and another one on the other side, like right there. Now, let's apply this. Shrink wrap, apply. Let's bring this circle in this mesh. And let's first see if this is going to work out. Haha. Because I don't know, I don't plan my videos. I actually do everything off the cuff and pretend as if I know everything, which I do. Don't question my methods. So let's count the amount of edges we have here. We have 12 edges, and on this circle we have 32. There's no way to divide this. So we actually messed it up before it even started now, didn't we? So let's delete some more. Now we have 16, and that's great because those are 32. And that means that we can now divide it by 2 and get the same amount of edges. Darn it, guys, aren't we smart? We are getting smarter day by day, aren't we? So let's go over to select, checker deselect right here, X, dissolve the vertices. We've got that right, 16 and 16, wow. Wow, wow, wow. I can't believe that this is going to work out. I'm simply going to select those edges and those ones as well. You can probably guess what's going to happen. We're going to do the bridge edge loops. That looks pretty cool to me, and that's a circle, all right. So let's do the same for the other ones. Let's go over here. Let's apply the shrink wrap first. Let's apply the shrink wrap first. Let's take both of these circles. Perhaps we can do it at the same time. Probably not. But you know what? I'm an optimistic guy. Control J. Let's select this circle. Control J. We just added both of these. Let's do the top one first. Ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. It's very close to this one. So how can we make sure that it's going to work out? Well, we can't. So let's remove that. We only have the big circle for now, and we're going to fix that shortly hereafter. But before we do that, we should make this button because, well, otherwise we're working with more geometry later on when we have to create this button. So we are switching around, but no problem. Damn, we did a good job on this, don't you think? All right, so let's go back to our button. We've got it right here. Let's select the inner area, and I will actually apply a grid fill, and it's immediately perfect. I use a span of 6 and offset of 0. This looks quite well for my taste. I'm going to press on P immediately, and now we have this separated. So we have the button. There are 2 things that we need to do, and very carefully so. I'm going to press Alt-E, faces along normals, and let's bring it outwards just a little bit so we have our button shape. Then I want to make sure that I have the other side, so I'm going to press Ctrl-I, but I don't want this area. So I'm going to press on 3, or I'm simply going to deselect this line. And now we only have the inner area. Why do I do that? Well, because I want to make sure that the button is going inside. So when the people who are trying to meticulously review my product after getting it from Gumroad, they will know that I didn't fool them. I actually made the inside of the button. Because I know how they are. They will zoom in like this, and they're like, ah, the Blender render didn't actually make a hole. He didn't actually place a button in there, but I did. And then they will be amazed and leave a 5-star review. That's how it works. So let's take this button then, and we're going to make some adjustments to it in order to make it look good. How are we going to do it? Well, it's actually quite simple. Let's first go over here. So now let's go over into this button and make sure that it looks good. How are we going to do it? Well, let's go into edit mode and let's select a loop cut. So looking at this, it's kind of like a blob. Now that we added this loop cut, it's starting to look a bit better. So let's increase the subdivisions. Starting to look pretty cool. But there are a couple more things that we can do in order to make it supreme. So let's select this. I believe that this is a nice and equal division of this model. So let's click on Loop Tools, Flatten, right here. Now we've got a flat line. Let's do the same for this one. Loop Tools, Flatten, Flat Line. So let's select this line and press V. And V is to tear something apart. So if I press V, now this part will be loose from its oppressor. Grid Fill. And I will also select the other one, Grid Fill, and now these are 2 separate buttons. Very good. I will do the same for this area. So hold Alt, select this edge loop, press V to tear it off, Grid Fill, and then for this one as well a Grid Fill. But now we have those weird looking lines from the buttons. I don't like that, and we can solve it very simply by adding a new loop cut and making sure that this is going into that direction. We could also do a bevel or something like that, but I think for our case, this is working out fine and it's a bit less work. All right, so we reached a crucial point in this modeling process once again. So let's turn it into a backup. So now let's go over here and apply 1 level of subdivision. Now we get a little bit more geometry to work with. There's 2 ways to go about it, and I will simply do the way that we did before. So select this one, cursor to selected. We've got some mesh right here. This is going to be deleted, I reckon. And when I do this, let's do it. we have 12 vertices, all right? So we have to keep that into account. I'm going to add a circle, mesh, circle, to make it real. Let's give it 12 vertices. Scale it down, RX 90, C, doesn't really matter for now. Shrink wrap, let's place it on the surface. Ooh, doesn't like doing that. And make sure it's a pretty small circle. It's a smaller circle than this one. And then I will add this to the original mesh. Oh, but before we do that, let's apply the shrink wrap modifier. Ctrl J, let's delete those faces. Let's select this. Let's select those ones last and bridge edge loops. All right, so now let's add the final circle. Shift S, cursor to selected. Then we'll place it right there. And then we've got our circle. This one, Shift S, selection to cursor. Let's make sure to set the origin to the geometry first, selection to cursor. Let's add a shrink wrap modifier, shrink wrap. Pop. Great. And let's add those two together. So first, shrink wrap, apply. Ctrl J, remove those faces. This one, that one, bridge edge loops. And now we have another. Ooh, the circle doesn't look too healthy actually. Not certain why that is. Ah, it was because this one was already shrink wrapped to a different surface, I reckon. Is that the case? Let's rotate this. Shrink wrap. This looks pretty good. Let's apply it. Ctrl J, bridge edge loops. And now we have our second circle. All right, so let's select this circle. It's not a really regular circle because it was changed a little bit by the shrink wrap modifier. I'm going to select this one and let's do this one as well. Shift D, click P, selection, and now these are a separate object. And what we're going to do is click on this. Let's select this separate object, loop tools, circle. And now it's back to being a regular circle. As you can see, it is a little bit different than the hole that we have here. We could try to go in here and perhaps shape this hole a bit more according to that normal circle. Let's see. Now we got that done. We didn't mess anything up. We can do the same for this area. So let's first select this circle. Let's go into loop tools, circle, and go back in the original mesh. Let's select that circle. Could be something like this, S and X. Just make sure that you are not getting wild shading issues. All right, so we've got those two. And those are normal circles. So I'm going to press F, and now it's filled up. I'm going to extrude these faces along the normals and bring it out just a little bit. Perhaps what we can do now is give it an eye and add a loop cut right here, a loop cut right there. Let's do the same for this one. And let's increase the subdivision and auto shade it smooth. Those look like some pretty good buttons to me. I think this one is a bit too much though. And I also feel like we should use the same method. So let's delete it. Let's go over here, Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's add a circle, or actually let's take this circle. Shift D, P, separate selection. We've got a circle here. Let's go into edit mode, loop tools, circle. Now it's an actual circle. Let's go back in the original mesh. Let's play around with it. Actually this one did pretty good. Something like this. Then I will select the original circle that we separated. I will press F. And I will press Alt E, faces along normals. Let's bring it outside. Let's press I. Bring it inwards ever so slightly. One loop cut over there, one loop cut over here. Let's increase the subdivision and let's shade it smooth. And there we have it, a perfect looking button. Now let's go inside of all of these buttons. So let's select them. Let's click on edit mode. Let's click on dash. And I want to make sure that we have only the back faces selected. Press Alt E. And then we'll bring this outside some more. So it's actually going inside the model. Let's press I. There you go. Let's click on dash again. And now it's actually going inside of the model. I really want to have that. All right, so now we got to give it some thickness. So let's go over here. I'm going to select all and extrude it inwards. Something like this. All right, so now we got to add some bevels to this. So I'm going into edit mode. Let's make sure that we are doing the dashboard view. So let's click on the dash icon. I'm going to click on all of these lines, and once again, don't select these, only select the outer lines, like this. Make sure you have all of them. Alright, and if you have everything selected on this outside area, like this, then we are ready to do the bevel. Don't select this one just yet. Alright, so let's do the bevel. Alright, so now let's go back into edit mode, and instead of selecting all the outer areas, let's select these inner areas. All of this, all of that. And now let's have a look at one, such as this one. Control B. And make it sharp like that. Awesome. And now we have a pretty cool looking model. I feel like all the face orientation is still correct, but I was wrong. So I'm going to select this, Shift N. So congratulations, this part of the model is now done. We are going to select everything and place it in a new background backup collection. So backup 4, I will call it, and make sure that we disable it. Very good. Now, for the next step, I'm going to select this. I'm going to click on 1. And right now we want to actually rotate this and maybe scale it down, bring it somewhat over here. And this fits near perfectly, so I guess we did a pretty good job. Take the outer ring, Shift D, P, separate the selection. We've got it selected right here. Press on 1, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't fit the reference exactly. We didn't model it according to the reference, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to select this, cursor to selected. Then I will select our little line, go into edit mode, select all, go to the spin tool, and I will simply do the spin with the Y. Something like this. And let's move it around using these sliders. Something like so. And this should be 120, I believe. Yeah, so now it's in the middle exactly. Well, as you can already see, something here is a bit different, but that's because that's an interior. For now, this is going fine. We have this part of the model. We can click out of this and make this straight, SX0. We can already add a mirror modifier if you'd like to do that. Mirror modifier on the x-axis. And this is the object that we want it to be mirrored on, something like so. And we can select this, G and X, bring it right over there, enable clipping. And it looks like this. Now there's a slight issue right here. And that will be resolved once we place the mirror above the subdivision. So that's the way we will do it. Okay, let's have a look. Looks pretty nice. I think this is all right. So let's go over to the next part where we are. So let's go over to the next part. We need to remove some area over here. We need to make sure that this area is loose and there's another part inside of this. And basically right then and there, we are nearing the end. I'm going to select this edge, press V, and then I will give this a grid fill. Very good. Then I will select the other one, grid fill, also pretty good. And that made sure that we separated it. We can add some extra geometry right here, like so. And that's that part, but it should be open. So let's go right over here. Let's add a loop cut. Let's select this area entirely, delete the faces, and now it's open. Yeah, now it's open. We need to make the interior for that as well, but that will come. Let's click on 1 again, and then we've got a part where it's open. I think if we select all of this, that might be good enough. Or maybe we can do it from here on. Yes, and then we will do the exact same on the other side, like this. That's great. And then we need to make sure that we get the rest. And now that we have all of this selected, I'm not going to delete it. I'm simply going to press P, separate the selection. And now this will function as our cushion. We're going to do that later on. But for now, let's hide it. Let's go over here. Let's select this vertex and this vertex. Let's slide it upwards because we are trying to create this sloping effect right there. GG. Let's select it, GG. Make sure it looks pretty good. And now I find that this part right here, it has some weird shading issues. I don't think it's because of the face orientation, but actually it is. Shift N, And now that should be fine. That's right. So that has been solved. Now let's make the interior of this. Take this inner area, not the outer one. Just take the inner area, Shift D, P, separate the selection. We've got it selected. I'm going to take this, go into edit mode and simply do the same trick. We're going to slide it inwards just a little bit. And now we're going to play around until it's hidden inside of this mesh. It's not sticking out anywhere else. Something like this is fine. We can do the same for the other side. So let's do this and then bring it inwards like that. Add a grid fill and now it's all filled up. And then I believe we have some type where it's sticking out like this. So only this middle area. Press E, bring it outwards just a little bit, not too much. R and Y, let's rotate it like this. And then we have that area. We can maybe add a loop cut surrounding this, going towards that side and maybe even towards this side. And then that should be good enough for what we are trying to do. So now let's go over to this part. And we probably want to apply the mirror, which I'm going to do right now. Let's merge by distance, make sure that everything is fine. So everything is connected here, that's great. So let's click on dash. Let's select this one and let's hide it. Very good. Then I'm going to select two vertices underneath here. Let's click on the dash icon again. I'm going to enable proportional editing. Press on 1. G and Z. Something like this. And if we unhide this, then that should probably be enough. Now it is sticking out right here now. So let's hide this for now. Let's click on this mesh and let's give it some thickness as well. So let's go in here, Alt E, extrude faces along normals. We don't want to bring this outside, but inside in this case. Very good. Looks pretty good over here as well. Now let's bring back our original circle. Look right there. Let's bring it upwards, S and Y just a little bit to make sure it goes inside of this mesh and fits in it like this. Very good. And now we still have a small problem over here. Let's scale that on the X axis. Just a little bit, then press X and bring it inside until it fits. S and Y. And now it is fitting perfectly into this side. Let's see, this is a bit harsher. So let's apply the modifiers right now. Let's now give it a bevel. So let's select this inner area, go all the way around this, and let's give this a small bevel. That looks pretty hard surfacey to me. I feel like we are lacking some geometry here. Give it a bit more curvature, just a little bit. Perhaps we can take this area, I believe it's a bit too far even, so let's just add another loop cut right here. Let's go into this one, let's add another loop cut, make sure it aligns. Very good, that's pretty, it's looking pretty nice. But now we only have two more things left to do. Let's go over here, let's add a mirror modifier. And let's select the image once again. I'm going to select this, add another mirror modifier, select the image. Now this is on the other side as well. Then we're going to do the same for this one. Mirror it over to the other side. Let's do the same for this. Mirror. And mirror it over to the other side. We're almost there, guys. We're almost there, but not entirely yet. And the first thing I'm going to do is place this on top of the subdivision and apply the mirror. I will do the same for each and every one of those. Let's do the same for this. Let's do the same for that. So I'm going to select this, LP, separate the selection. Now it's loose. Going to do the same for this one, LP, separate the selection, and it's loose. Doing the same for this one. Let's select it, LP, and now it's loose. Very good. And I'm also going to do it for this one, by the way. So let's apply the mirror. Let's go over here, LP, separate the selection. And now this is also loose. Let's patch this up, because there's a giant hole in our model. We don't actually want that anymore. So how are we going to do it? This was a pretty well-made circle. And there's two ways that we can do it. One, we made a lot of backups, so we can either use those, or I'm simply going to select the loop inside of this, delete all of those faces, like this. Then I will select this area, grid fill. We don't even have to do anything anymore. And that looks pretty good. Let's do it on the inside as well, because now we get a hole on the inside. I don't like that, even though nobody's going to see it. Let's add some more geometry. All right, now let's do the same for the circles. Let's go over here. And it seems like we can simply select all of this and that and that. Whoop. Control plus 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 plus. We have to delete this one first. Maybe we can do even more. No, it's going to be tough if we do it like that. So let's delete it. Then let's select this loop and that loop. Let's do it on the inside again. Then let's remove all of this. Do the same on this side. Do it again right here and do it again right here. Now if we select this entire area, I do believe we use a grid fill, and that basically solved our problem now, didn't it? Except for the one on the inside. So let's do the same for the inside. Solve the problem. All right, so now this has been entirely patched up. Looks pretty good if you ask me. Snap out of it, and now we have this side as well. Now, another method that we could have used is by going over to the backup collection, like somewhere over here. And what do you have? A perfect circle like this. It doesn't even have the subdivision on it already. So you can also use that and place it right over here. That might be the smarter method. No problem, we have already fixed it. So we're just going to leave it like this. I think it's fine. And now the final thing left to do is to make those cushions. All right, and of course we're only going to make one, and then we'll mirror it over to the other side and turn it around so nobody sees that we only did one thing. Haha. Cursor to selected. Let's add a mesh donut, torus. And let's go over to this side. We have the major radius. Let's make sure it's somewhat the same as this. And we have the minor radius. I think something like this should do the trick. Let's rotate this. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier. And this shade smooth. Alright guys, so during the recording of this video I noticed there was not sufficient disk space, which means that the recording stopped. I already sculpted the entire thing. I simply am going to give you instructions on how I did it. So right now I have a donut right here and I shaped it just a little bit. Let me take it like this to become a bit more flat on the bottom side. And I also added this particular part, which I used Alt S to scale inwards. Why did I do that? Well, that's because we get this line right here. And you can make it more pronounced by adding I. I think that's a bit too much. I think using this with a crease, so Shift E, would be enough to get this effect. Now, how can we make sure that this actually looks like this? Well, it's quite simple actually. I'm going to apply the subdivision and then it will look like this. We can go over into sculpt mode, so right here. Then there's something very interesting. We have the mask, and the mask allows us to draw on this mesh, and that's a part where nothing is going to be influenced by anything we draw on it. So I'm going to make it very small and I will draw on this simply as an instruction. This is sculpting, so I'm going to select all of this, something like so. Now, there are two things that we must do. The first thing I did is to bring in some randomization in this cushion. How did I do it? I tried playing around with the cloth filter first. So I'm going to select the cloth filter right here, set it to pinch, and I will select it, and you can see that it does something with this mesh. Some interesting stuff actually. Now it's dying. But as we noticed, it's not influencing the black part that we just created. So don't be too strong with this. Maybe something like so should be fine. So let's use the draw brush and actually make this smooth a bit more, like this, holding shift. Alright, so now we have our first layer of detail, and I think that looks pretty good. You can play around with the draw brush to make it a bit more randomized. We already get some of those type effects right there. I'm going into the crease sharp, And this is basically what I used throughout the entire mesh. So I drew in it like this, either holding Control or just pressing with the mouse. Now this is a bit too strong. So what I recommend is pressing Shift F, making it slightly less strong and drawing on it like this. And this is just a time consuming process. I simply went throughout the entire model, all the way throughout, like here, and I drew some over here and there. And this is an artistic process. You have to make this yourself. It could also go very fast if you just do it like this. Just make sure that it looks good. All right, so make sure it looks a bit more like this. Well, you have to go over the entire mesh, and this is just going to take some time, okay? Then we are going back into the mask, and if you will Control, you can remove an entire piece of the mask at once. And then we are simply going back into this draw sharp brush again, and we're going to follow this entire line because we want to make sure that it's quite there. It doesn't have to be extreme, but we want to make sure that it's visible enough. You know what I'm saying? So we're going all the way over this line, make sure that there is this separation going on. You could have the mask enabled still when you do this. So maybe one more subdivide. And then you can draw in this with sculpt mode very easily. All right, so that's how you get this specific part. Very cool. Once you have that line, you can also draw in this area. And make sure to do it subtly. There are some lines over there. And well, do your thing. I did it for this side as well, but make sure to keep the overall shape. So now we have this entire piece done. How awesome is that? Cool. So let's go back into object mode. Let's delete this donut and let's bring this one over to the other side. So mirror, let's select the image as the mirror part. And now I'm going to apply the mirror, select this entire area, P, separate the selection. Let's RZZ, but first go to object, set origin to geometry, RZZ. Let's rotate this around somewhere over here. RYY, and make sure that it's just sticking on there nicely. And this part we need to do some sculpting with. So let's go over into sculpt mode. Let's go to the draw brush. And let's simply bring it out. Okay, awesome. So there's only one more thing that we need to do. So let's go over into this one. Let's select one of these lines. I'm going to select this line. Shift D, P, separate selection. We've got this line right here. I will convert it to a curve. Then going into the curve, I will give it some geometry. Under bevel, it will be some type of bevel. Like this. Maybe give it a slightly higher resolution, 5 for example. Then it looks like this. And now we should go into checker deselect. Check, select, checker deselect. Let's select some more and dissolve these vertices. Very good. Then we're going to select everything. Select, checker deselect. There you go. Then I'm going to do the selected to 1 and I will scale this outwards or inwards, whatever you like, and then scale it just a little bit. Let's add a subdivision surface modifier. And now we have some type of padding for the inside. So it is actually being held together. It's being stitched. Small detail, but I think it's pretty cool. Let's do the same for the other side as well. So let's select this entire line, make sure that it's all visible. Shift D, P, separate the selection. We are now going to select this selection. I will turn it into a curve. Now we've got that right here. Give it a small bevel so we actually see some geometry. Then I'm going to edit mode, select, checker deselect. Let's select some more. X, dissolve vertices. Let's have all of these selected. Select, checker deselect. Doesn't work. Let's do it again. Select, checker deselect, and now it works. I don't know why. Let's turn this down. Scale it inwards. And finally scale it outwards just a little bit. And add a subdivision surface modifier. Alright guys, that's it. This is the model and I hope you are very proud of what you have created. It is a pretty cool looking model, and in the next video we are going to texture all of this, so make sure you don't miss it. I hope you learned a lot about using circular meshes and how to manipulate those without destroying anything in the process or without getting a lot of trouble. We learned how to shred and tear these buttons up. We learned how to make a very organic part of this model. and turned it into this headband as well, proportionally and correct. We learned how to sculpt these speaker cushions. We also used a mask and used the crease brush in order to create some cool details in this. We created some circular meshes in our circle, which is a challenge in and of itself, but we did it and we created some beautiful looking buttons. And right here, the overall shape of the mesh just looks professional. It has been done quite well. We also made sure to get this inner area and some smaller details. Those were pretty easy. So in the next video, I'm going to show you exactly how to texture this step by step. And we're also going to add some empties in order to animate all of this separately while still having a main controller. So I hope you're as excited about it as I am. And if you want to watch that video, click right here. Recently, I hired 2 3D artists to make an animation. The model they used was a headphone model which I provided to them, and they only had to make some animations. But in this free mini-series, you're learning exactly how to model, texture and animate this headphone. So in the previous video, we modeled a professional headphone. It looks like this. And in this video, we're going to texture it procedurally. So let's get started straight away. So I've already brought in some lights. So as you can see, we've got some lights right here. And that is simply so we can see the texture. I like working in cycles, so I can immediately see the end result. This is Eevee, by the way, so I'm going to set it to cycles. Denoise, turn it on, so you don't have to watch my screen refresh all the time. We are going to give this a texture. New texture, and I will bring in a noise texture. For me, I have set my noise texture to shift 1, which means that I can bring in as many of those as I'd like in a matter of seconds. Now I'm going to press on Ctrl T and I will place the object into the vector. I will also bring in a color ramp, which I do very fast because I have it on the shortcut Ctrl Q. Noise texture right over here, color ramp right over there, and let's plug it into, not the base color, but the roughness. I'm going to set the base color to black, like this, and now we can actually see what's going on here. I'm going to this black color and I will change the hex code to C2C2C2FF. I'm going to apply that and that will make it a whole lot less dark, but we still have some variation in here. But this is too much. So I'm going to set the scale of the noise texture to 18.5. I will increase the detail all the way to 15 and the roughness can go to 0.9. And then I will set the distortion to 1.9 as well. But now all we need is a normal map in order to give it a bit more detail. So I'm going to bring in a Voronoi texture. I will Ctrl T this object in the vector, and then I will add a color ramp and a bump map. Right here, color ramp into the height, bump into the normal, and the distance into the vector. And now we get this type of effect. I'm going to set the scale to 353. I'm going to keep the random. This gives it a bit more detail to work with. Looks pretty nasty, by the way. I'm going to set the strength to 0.06. And now we just have that extra layer of detail that really makes it seem a bit more real. Now, I think this is a bit too visible. So I'm going into this color ramp. I will select the white color and I will bring down the value until it is almost obscured. So something like this. We are zooming in real deep now. Maybe it can be a bit lighter, but we don't want to be able to see like this distortion pattern in here. All right, so that already looks like a pretty professional black texture for this plastic. And I'm going to select all of this. So make sure to select everything, all of the buttons as well. I'll do the same on this side. Then we select this black plastic last, go into materials, copy material to select it. And now we have done quite a lot in a very short amount of time. So first we are going to make all the base materials for this. We have just finished this one. And later on we will add some specific textures to this, such as the JBL logo and the letters that are inside of this, stuff like that. But for now, let's first do the headband. So we've got this one new. So first things first, I will bring in a noise texture. Ctrl T, place this in the object. I will bring in a magic texture. Magic texture, wow. We have never used a magic texture before. What is that good for? I'm going to add a Voronoi texture. Let's also add the vector into this from the mapping node and do the same with the magic texture. Then we can add a color ramp for all of these. I will add a bump for the Voronoi. Shift A, bump. Place the color into the height, distance into the vector. Let's increase the scale to 355. Let's keep the rest as it is. 0.06 should be fine. Let's place this into the normal. The noise texture can go into the color ramp. 18.5, 1.85. Exactly, this is the previous texture, but a little bit different. Roughness, we can take our previous hex value, so C2, 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 FF. Then we'll take this color and make it black for now. Then we'll take this white and make it 0.75. So let's have a look at this magic texture. This is what it looks like. Pretty interesting, right? I'm going to set the depth to 3 and I will increase the scale to 24. And now we're getting this type of pattern that we can really make look like the original mesh. We can increase the scale, do something like this. Let's make some contrast here. Turn the white color to a darker gray color. So I'm going to use the hex code of 434343FF and I will bring this black slider closer and then we will place this into the principal BSDF. And let's have a look. This actually still doesn't look that good, so I'm going to increase the metallic. Are there other methods to do that? Yes, there are. What we could do is select all of this, unwrap, angle based, and place this from the UV into the vector. And then we will have a shape that looks like this, of course. It is split right down the middle, so actually before we do that we should apply the mirror, U, unwrap, angle based, and now we have all of this. And we can play around with the scale until it looks pretty uniform and correct. So this is also something that you can do. The other one looks a bit more randomized. This looks a bit more created or man-made, and that is totally fine if you ask me. I think both of these are cool, so do with that whatever you like. I think both of these are awesome. I'm just going to leave it like this now, so UV in the vector, and that's what we're going to be using for the magic texture at least. And we are going to take the object and plug it into the noise. And you will see that we'll bring back our noise texture and the object into the Voronoi texture as well. I think that looks a bit better. And the magic texture is the only one we want to be operated on from the UV. Okay, so now that looks pretty cool and detailed, and that didn't cost us any trouble at all. It's very easy actually. But I'm willing to bet you never used the magic texture in such a cool way before. So let's now do the cushions. I'm going to click on New. So in order to make this texture, we are simply going to make it black. Then I will go and add a Voronoi texture, Control T, object into the vector. Let's bring in a color ramp and a bump. Let's plug the distance into the vector, height, normal. Then we're going to increase this to 355. And then we get this pattern. I'm going to set the power to 0.05, something like this. And what we could also try, by the way, is set this to distance to edge. And this will give it this bit more leather type material. Let's increase the detail and the roughness a bit to make it seem a bit more real. So something like this should probably do the trick. But now I think it can be made a bit more extreme. So let's increase the strength. It does look pretty cool now, doesn't it? So I will look for the geometry. Let's add in the pointiness into a color ramp. And let's see, we can definitely create some type of effect right here by using these sliders. The pointiness, by the way, the pointiness is basically checking out how far away mesh is from another mesh. So it's kind of able to detect height from the color. Right here we can see that all these black areas are sitting in our creases that we made, and we have the white area, and that is simply the rest. So we can use this in the roughness, for example. So I switched these two around now, and that looks a little bit better. I'm going to keep increasing this value until I feel like we have reached some type of equilibrium. I'm going to bring in a area light somewhere, simply so we can see what it looks like. Right. Not bad. Not bad. These are the type of cushions that I think are pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I will select this inner mesh. I will give it the same texture as this plastic. Like right here, copy material to selected. I'm not even sure if we have to change something. Let's do the same for this one. And let's simply copy it over from the previous one. Copy material to selected. All right. We can decrease the scale of the Voronoi in the cushion, by the way, so it becomes a bit more visible. We can also bring this down a bit. That seems pretty plasticky, but also not too reflective. It has enough difference from the original plastic that we got right here. So now let's add some of these logos to the design. All right, so now we are going to select this area and we will add the JBL logo. And the way we're going to do it is simply by adding a new texture right here. Let's copy this principal BSDF and I will press Ctrl T and I will open up and bring in the JBL logo. Now, this logo shouldn't be plugged into the base color. I will simply select the principal BSDFs, Ctrl 0, and turn this color into the vector of the mix shader. And now nothing happens because there is no UV unwrap. So what I will do is click on all of this, unwrap, angle based. Let's have a look at the UV. Let's select this entire inner area. Ctrl ++++++++++. And this has not been UV'd correctly. So UV, angle based. All right, we're going to place this right there. I can see the JBL logo. It has been rotated, so we should rotate it back until it is straight. Let's scale this up until we get the logo in the right size on here. Let's go back into the shader editor. Then I'm going to decrease the roughness of this texture, which means that it will become shiny, like so. You can see that when the light's entering into it, we get this cool looking effect. However, we also have this effect right here because the JBL logo is being duplicated. So in the image texture, we are not going to set it to repeat, we are going to set it to extend. And when you do that, it should be entirely removed. But it is a bit too rough for my liking. I think we can see too much of the reflection. So I'm going to increase the roughness in this just a little bit, so it becomes this washed out, blurry type glass. Play around with this until you get what you like. I think this is great because we get this blurred color from the HDRI, but it's not so reflective that you can actually see it as a mirror or something. All right, cool. But there is also this place on the inside. Seems like we have a lot of problems going on there. I will enter into edit mode. I will press Ctrl I. I will go to the UV editor and I will make sure that all of this is in a white area. So if we do that, everything on the inside should be gone. Here's where it's going to become a bit more complex. So let's go over to the shader editor. This one is using a UV, this one is using an object, but we need a new UV in order to place the correct letter on the inside of this. We're barely going to see it, but still it's a detail that you might want to add. Copy this mix shader, let's bring it in here. I will bring in a new principal BSDF, and I will also go to this area, the vertex group area, and I will open UV maps and make a new one. So I'm going to click on plus. This is the original UV map. I'm going to remove this, and you will see that the logo will be removed as well. I'm going into UV map. I will place in this UV map and plug it into the vector. And what do you have? Our logo has returned. So that's going fine. But now on the other side, we also want to place something. We're not going to do that on the same UV map. We're going to do it on a new one. So I'm going to click on plus right there. And I will call this letter L. I believe it's the left side. Then I will turn this on. So this one turns off automatically. You can only select one UV map at a time. And I will bring in that UV map right here and call it. And I will select letter L. Let's click on Ctrl T here. We're going to delete the texture coordinate, bring in the vector. We get an image texture. And I've brought in the letter L, which I simply made in DaVinci Resolve by typing L using a specific non-serif texture. Principal BSDF can go into the bottom one and the image texture can go into the vector. And now we have the L right here. Very cool, but it shouldn't be there. I'm going to click on dash, and on the inside, I will select this area. Ctrl +++++++, U, unwrap, angle based, and then we have the L right here. Very cool. Let's go to the UV editor real quickly and let's rotate this around. Something like this should probably be fine. Let's go out of dash. Ooh, it's a bit too large. So we should make it smaller by scaling it up. Maybe place it somewhere over here in the middle. Now let's click on Ctrl I. Let's U, unwrap, angle based. Let's select all of this and bring it outside. And now you will be able to see that we do have the JBL logo on this side. We have the L on this side, but there's nothing overlapping and nothing is going to be destroyed on the same UV map. So that's the reason we did that. I'm going out of base color. I'm simply going to increase the roughness to something like 0.3 because I don't want this to be as reflective as the logo, but it should be like one of those stickers that you like place on the inside. I am going into this texture, by the way. I don't like it anymore. The metallic was too much. So let's turn this off. Let's go over here and make it more like this, a bit more plasticky. When it comes to the L and the R, we have to do it the same for the other side. I'm going to select this part, then select this part, go to the material, copy material to select it, and nothing happens because we do not have a UV map. And this one should get its own UV maps, otherwise it will be destroyed. So I'm going to click on plus, and the first one will be JBL right, and this one will be letter R. I'm going to select the JBL right. We should now copy this material. Okay, otherwise we are going to change the UV maps for this one as well, and that's not something that we want to do. So I'm going to select this, make sure that it's a new material. We have the JBL right, so we're going to place the logo in there right now, and if we delete this UV map JBL right, nothing will change on this one, but we can now freely change this one. Okay, so I'm going to select it. I will select the inner area once again, Control plus 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 U, unwrap, angle based, and now we get the logo. Let's go to the UV editor and let's turn off the overlays, and let's rotate this around until it makes sense. And now we're going to press Control I, U, unwrap, angle based, make sure all of this is in a black area so we get nothing on the inside. Then going back to the shader editor. This one is also turned red. I'm going to call this letter R. I think we Control Z a bit too much. Letter R, and I will change this to letter R. And now our letter L will still remain, but we can place our letter R here right now. So let's change this texture right here, and let's do the same trick. Make sure it's selected right here underneath UV maps, and that this is the one that's active. Then I'm going into edit mode. Let's select this inner area. Control plus 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 plus. Let's have a look. Plus plus plus. U, unwrap, angle based. Rotate this around until it makes sense. So let's go over into our buttons right here, and I'm going to select this button, press L, press P, separate the selection. I will do the same for this one, separate the selection, and now we have 3 different buttons that we can give different materials. And if we go over to our L side, this one, I'm going to copy this texture, so now it's its own texture. And I believe if we go back to the button now and delete all of this, Control X, and simply bring in our principled BSDF in the surface, then nothing should have changed. And that is correct. So for every one of these textures now, they are their simple form again. But for this one, we have kept our JBL logos and stuff like that. So let's go to the button. This is very simple. We are simply going to add a bump map right here, and we need to plug an image into the height. So let's press Ctrl T, and instead of strength, give it the height, and now I will give it an image. This one should be plus, and I've added it. I will simply select all of this, press U, unwrap, angle based. Let's go to the UV editor. I'm going to select the plus image. Let's go over here, let's turn this off, let's select everything, and make sure that our plus is located where we want the plus to be. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to select this entire area, U, unwrap, angle based, and now let's add this dot somewhere. So let's go to the UV editor. Let's go turn off the overlays. Let's make sure that we have the dot as our image so we can see what we're doing. Let's go over here, let's place it right in the middle, and then we'll scale it down until this dot makes a bit more sense. And now we're going to select the final one, go to the shader editor. Let's copy the material. I've got this one selected, by the way. And then I will bring in the minus image. Let's go into edit mode. Let's select all of this. U, UV unwrap, angle based. Let's go to the UV editor. Let's turn off the overlays. And once again, let's select the correct image, the minus.png. And I will place this in the middle, minus dot plus. And now for the final texture, we need to add the on button on the on button. I feel like this is the on button. And I will go to the shader editor, select this button, then we'll select one of these buttons, like this one, copy material to select it. Then we'll go back, then we'll select this, make a duplicate, and then we'll bring in a new image. So right over here, open, UV unwrap, angle based. Let's go to the on button image. So now this also has an on button. All right, so all the textures are done now. We have made something pretty premium out of this, if you ask me. I think this looks very professional. We've got some pretty cool looking textures here. The plastic looks pretty real. We've got the cushions that look pretty cool. We've got the magic texture that's doing its thing right here. And well, overall, we get the R, we get the L, we get the bumps on the buttons, like over here. I think this looks very cool and supreme. The final thing to do would be to add some empties so we can actually control all of this. Now, if we select all of this and we would rotate it, you can already see that this part would definitely go through this part. So we should make some changes. I'm going into this area, add a loop cut, and I will select anything that's above this. And let's also select this line. P, separate selection. And now I will select this area, Shift S, cursor to selected. And I want to make sure that the origin point for this, the origin here, is origin to 3D cursor. Because now if we rotate this, it's going to be rotated along this side and it will never move throughout this area of the headphones. What I'm going to do now is simply bring in a empty plane axis. And I want to make sure that we got this visible. And let's select this one first, then let's select that one. And this should be parented to the empty. So empty, keep transform. And if we now move this empty, that area will be moved. So let's select this part, Shift S, cursor to selected, and let's add an empty. I will bring in the sphere. I think the sphere for this part looks pretty cool. I'm going to scale it up ever so slightly, and then I will select this, and all the buttons, of course. Make sure that we have everything, and that seems to be the case. All of this will be parented to this sphere. So Control P, object, keep transform, and if we now rotate the sphere, this will move around in its own position. And now I'm going to select this one because I want this to be parented to this empty. So I'm going to select this empty last, Control P, object, keep transform. And now if we move this empty, everything will move, but we can also move this one and only those separate parts will move. So now we have maximum versatility in our animation. All right, and I'm going to lock off all the locations. This should not be able to move without rotating. This is only going to be able to be moved with rotations, but not with G. And the same goes for this one, otherwise it will flow away. So let's turn off the location, let's turn off the scale as well. Let's turn off the scale for this one. So we're now going to make the exact same setup for the other side. And well, that's basically the gist of it. It's not that hard. We're going into this mesh. We will select everything from here on outwards to the top. So plop, 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 plop. P, separate the selection. Let's go over here. And now we get this part, and that should have a new origin point. So let's select this entire area. Shift S, cursor to selected. Object, set origin, origin to 3D cursor. Then I will bring in an empty, a plane axis. This is the plane axis. I will select this one, and that should be parented to the plane axis. Object, keep transform. Shift S, cursor to selected, and it's going over to the other side because it doesn't have its own geometry origin point. Origin to geometry, Shift S, cursor to selected, empty. Let's bring in a sphere. I'm going to scale this up. I'm going through this a bit faster. You've already seen it now. I will select all of these meshes and make sure that we have everything. I will select the sphere last, Control P, object, keep transform. And if we now move the sphere, we can move this part. Now let's parent the sphere to the empty. Select the empty last, Control P, object, keep transform. And now everything will move, but we can also rotate this one on its own. And that is exactly how you do this. Let's turn off location for this and scale. Let's select this one, location and scale. So now we can only rotate it, and that is completely fine. So let's select this empty, that empty, and this object. Shift S, cursor to selected. And now it's somewhat in the middle. So let's press empty. So let's Shift A, empty. Let's bring in a cube. Let's scale it until this object fits entirely in it. Make sure the origin point is somewhat in the middle. There are a couple of objects here without an empty, okay? So we have this one, for example. We have this area, this one, and this one. And those are not connected to an empty. So we want to select those first. Then we're going to select this empty, that empty, this empty, that empty. Finally the cube. Control P, object, keep transform. And now if we move this cube, the entire object will be moved, but we can also move our separate. But since we changed our empty parents, we now have to make sure that this one is connected to this one. Object, keep transform. And now if we move the cube, it will also move because there is a hierarchy. So the cube is the main controller. This one is connected to the main controller, and this one is connected to this one that's connected to the main controller. I hope that makes a bit more sense. We have this sphere right here. Select this empty last, Control P, object keep transform. And now the exact same hierarchy will be part of this structure. So now we can simply animate this empty around. We have full control over all of this and all of this, which means that we are ready for the next stage, and we're going to do some lighting and some animations in the next part of this mini-series. So I hope you're ready for it. If you haven't watched the Fiverr video yet, I highly recommend checking that out before following the rest of this course. So click on this video next to check that out. Otherwise, go on to the next part and I'll see you here. There is no need for there to be a tutorial which tells you to press Shift D and place a light over here. This is not a step-by-step tutorial on where to place your lights. This is more about the theory of where your light should be placed and why. So today I'm going to teach you exactly how to create good studio lighting each and every time you open Blender. So first of all, I'm going to press on N, and the first thing we see with this model is that it's way too big. You can get the model on Gumroad for free, by the way, or you can follow the previous two tutorials in order to follow along with this tutorial. We have dimensions of 3.76 m. If we add a cube, for example, which is 2 by 2 by 2, we can immediately see that this headphone is way too big. So I'm going to change that. I will select our main controller right here. And what we want to do is make sure that we're working in scale. It's not particularly necessary. We could light this very well just using area lights. But if we want to add some bokeh, for example, so let's say we were to place the camera right here and we want to have a bokeh on this side, select this mesh, for example, and then decrease the f-stop. Let's go over to cycles. Then we have to use some pretty weird values in order to get that right. So now it's on 2, and for a camera, a normal f-stop, for example, is 2.8, 2.8, 3.2. Those are the normal type of f-stops that you will be using when you're trying to create bokeh in an actual camera. Right now we don't have that bokeh. We cannot see it. We have to use extreme values in order to get something that resembles it. So if we want to animate this later on with this exact lighting setup, well, we're going to have a problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the scale of this model. So as I just said, it is 3.76. We should make it smaller. I'm going to press S.1 and that will make it 1/10 the length. 37 centimeters. I still think that's pretty big. I know you have a very big brain, but I, as a small pea-brain person, definitely need to scale this down a bit more. So perhaps we can do something like 17 centimeters. I don't know if that's correct. Maybe we can make it slightly smaller. I'm just going to roll with it. I didn't look up the measurements. Shift S, selection to cursor, and we're going to move it all the way over there. You might be wondering, why are we working with such a small mesh? But if I now place this camera right here, and I will use the f-stop once again, which we still have enabled. I'm going to set it to 2.8, which is normal. Now we actually get some realistic bokeh. Okay, you can already see that those values are a lot more normal and are values that are actually used in a camera instead of 0.1. There is no lens that does 0.1. That's pure digital magic. Plus we have a lot more fine-grained results as well. So we have way more options right now instead of only being able to use 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, stuff like that. We now have a whole range which we can use in order to adjust our bokeh. I like to work in this fashion, especially when I'm going to animate it. If it's just a lighting thing, then maybe not. Then maybe it doesn't matter that much. Now, what you'll also see is we have a 10 watt area light here, and it's lighting the entire thing. So we don't need these absurd huge numbers like 10,000, stuff like that. If you ever struggle with that, it's probably because your scale is off. So I'm going to select Alt R, and I'm going to tell you something about lighting in general. So I've been thinking about how to explain lighting, because most of the time it's just looking at it. You know there is a light, you can place the light around, and this will generate some type of result for you. There is no need for there to be a tutorial which tells you to press Shift D and place a light over here. You can do that already. Actually, what you're seeking is knowing what good lighting actually looks like and why it looks like that. So what I've come up with is that we're first going to set the world strength to 0 to make it entirely black. And right now we can see our lighting in a different manner than you normally do. If you don't do this, actually you're going to get this fill light, but it's grayish and I don't like it. Now, if you look at a model like this, which is completely black and you have a black background, then the light is basically the only thing saving it. If we have this one, for example, there really isn't much going on, but we also want to make sure that we get the shape right. So when we look at it like this, sure, you might be thinking, all right, so this might be a headphone, but it's not clear from the first visual cue. First time you see this image, you should know this is a headphone. And especially when it's a bit farther away, you might be in doubt as to what this is. So one of the things that light should do is give it contours. We should give contours to this model to make sure that everybody who sees the image for the first time knows exactly what it is. And we can do that like this, for example. So now let's have a look at this. We can immediately see, even with the dark background, what this object is supposed to represent. This is a headphone. You can definitely see that the contours are clear. Clear separation between the foreground and the background. And the foreground in this case is going to be the product, which is pretty much always going to be the foreground. So the first step is to make sure that all the contours are so clear that we can immediately see what this object is. Now the next step is to try and make it look a bit more beautiful by adding some contrast between the light values. So what's going on here is this light right here is a bit stronger than this light. And what you'll often see in websites or in any form of graphic design is a gradient. So there might be parts that are lighter and parts that are darker. Rarely is it ever fully black. You don't want to do this because afterwards, in post-processing, you can always make something black. It's a lot easier to destroy light data where there is light data instead of bringing light data where nothing is there. This is basically just a black pixel, okay? So it's a lot harder to add something to it instead of removing it. We want to make sure that everything is a bit more filled in. And the way you do that is by placing a light that's bigger. The bigger the light, the softer it becomes. So now we have a soft light and it's filling in the shadows, as you can see. So if we scale this down, it becomes harder. If we scale this up, it's still filling in the shadows. You can play around with the light power. And if we turn this off, you'll be able to see what this adds. Completely dark and a bit more back. And once again, if you want to remove this later on, no problem, we can do that. We at least now have light data. Now, what I like to do is light from the back first. Let's take an area light. Let's make it small because I want this to be hard. I'm going to rotate this and I'm going to rotate that in such a fashion so that we have a rim light coming from the back. And then we also have this soft light right here, which is going to make this softer. And finally, what we can do, looking at our camera position, I'm going to place it somewhere over here anyways. Maybe a bit more on a 45-degree angle, like over here. And I'm also going to make it 80 millimeters, GZZ. And I want to look up to it, RXX, so it seems a bit more powerful. But anyway, this light is going to be a rim light like this. This is going to be a harder light, then we have a softer light, and this will bring us to a point where we have a lot of contrast. We are basically trying to bring contrast to the right places. And what I like to do is film from the angle where the rim light is on the opposite side. And then right here, I'm going to make a new one. I'm going to turn it around, scale it up. And from this side, we can also make it a bit stronger and maybe decrease the spread. And then play around with the power like this. So what have we got now? So this light, if I turn it off, is removing this extra rim, this extra highlight on the side. And I really think this adds a lot to it. And now the other light, so let me turn those two off. Now we can see that it's a headphone. But when we turn this one back on, we get a bit stronger highlights and right here as well. And the final one is basically making sure that we actually see something. Instead of it being just a silhouette, now it's actually getting some lighting. And finally, I like to have a logo streak, or at least some light in the logo, something like that, and then decrease the power by a whole lot. Play around with this. I want the back to be a bit more dark than the front. Once again, we are working with gradients here because if this is entirely white, G and Y, it's just too much. I want it to be a bit more of a gradient from dark to light or from light to dark. I think that looks better. We now have the basic setup for this lighting pattern. So let me turn off everything one by one. So we started off with the contours, and there should be enough of them to actually see what it is, this object, and that's what we have right here. But there are still some dark areas, so we added a soft light to fill all those shadows in, and we can always make it darker if you like. Now we have an area light which is bringing in some more contrast. So we have these brightened and more exposed areas right here, and there are some highlights. Then we add a main light that is going to give more shape to the entire model. This one is optional. If you do not like this and you think this is fine, you can go for this. I think this is a better representation of the model. We still keep our gradient. Maybe it could be a little bit softer, something like this. And finally, we have the light that's going to fill in the logo, which we always want to see. Now, here we can move onwards to some more specific lights or some specific colors. So if I enter into this and look at what it does, we can play around with the color warmth of this. So let me turn this off. I'm going to make it more bluish, for example, and maybe this one as well. That's way too blue. Maybe a bit less. Soft light, this is what it's doing. These are the rim lights that we added right there. So let's make it more bluish. I'm going to stick with the same color tone in this case. So this is the way to light a product. In this case, I really didn't want to have this be a follow along tutorial where you just play some lights. I actually try to make you understand the thought process behind lighting. And what we can do now that we have this is actually, let's place all of these lights in its own collection. I'm going to call it headphone lights. Then I'm going to select the headphone, open Lumio to light linking collection. The light collection is the headphone lights and the headphones is the collection, add light linking. So now that we've added the light linking, we can add a background. So let's say we add a plane, bring it up high. Let's select these two, Control B. First, apply the scale, Control A, apply the scale, give it a big bevel. I like adding a subdivision surface modifier as well. This is optional. And then I will go over here, shader editor, new, make it white, wider, and then I will add a light, area light. And we can also give this a gradient. And now we can basically give it any color we like. We can either keep the gradient like this or bring the plane down, make it more of a flat area on the back and make the plane, let's say, blue. And now we have a pretty cool blue tone. Or we can make it orange. And the lighting will still work on our main model. And one thing that we might need to do is go over to the headphone lights and change the power of all of these at once if we want to make it stronger, so we don't have to go back into each and every single light. We can just do it from here. And using these principles, I'm going to slightly improve some of these lighting setups. So I want more highlights over here, for example. And there's one more final thing that we can do. If you would like to do that, we can open the HDRI browser, and this really adds something to your final model and the overall look of it. So make sure to play around with that, but don't make it too strong because we didn't make a lighting setup for nothing. I recommend you to use these principles and find a good lighting setup for yourself. This is not a step-by-step tutorial on where to place your lights. This is more about the theory of where your light should be placed and why. If you're interested, you can check out the King of Light bundle pack. It contains Lumio, 365 gobos and Geolights Pro. And if you want to watch the next video where we're going to do some animations, I highly recommend clicking right here. So today I'm going to show you one of the most important animations that you can master. And the reason why this is the most important animation is because it's very slow, it's very simple, and it's liked by a lot of people. It's going to be a short tutorial, but you'll learn a lot. And if you master this specific style, then everybody will like your product animations. It's as simple as that. It's very slow, it's very smooth, and it's very simple. So we already have our headphones right here. We placed some lighting in the previous tutorial. We can now place a camera. So I'm going to place it somewhere underneath here, looking upwards. Control-Shift-0. The camera itself has 80 millimeters, which is fine. I'm going to bring this somewhat over here and make sure that this part is on the thirds, so that we see the logo on the thirds. And it looks like this. So let's go into the camera, select depth of field, and now everything is becoming blurry because we haven't selected an object that we want to be in focus. I'm going to select this one right here because we want more emphasis on the logo. So now let's play around with the f-stop until we get what we like. I think this is a bit too much and it can look very cool, but we're we're already getting some bokeh over here. I'm going to use the f-stop of 5 and I'm going to set blades to 6. Not that we're going to see any blades, but I like to do that because it keeps my workflow consistent. Now here we have the logo, and I'm going to place the 3D cursor right there, and I will place an extra light. And this light, shine at it. It's a bit hard, I'm just going to use Lumio. There is the light in our logo. But as you can see, the entire object is being lit way too much. And even if we bring down the light power of this, yeah, this looks pretty cool, right? But we're still getting a lot of trouble with these other textures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this light and I'm going to teach you a new trick. We're just going to park that light right here for now. And I'm simply going to select the main controller, which is this cube. On the first frame, let's start from over here. Press I. Let's make it a slow animation. So let's do 90 or 100 frames. That's approximately 4.5 seconds. And I'm simply going to move it like this. Press I. But I'm going to use a linear animation, and we barely ever use that, but I'm going to use it right now. So let's set this to linear, and it's simply turning around. So this is the simplest animation you can do. It's literally an animation that's going from A to B without any speed changes. It's so simple, but it does look smooth. And the animation part now is done. Didn't I tell you? It's quite simple. Now, where we're going to make it premium is with the lighting. So right here, we have this light that we aimed at our logo. So I will go into this light and I select it and I make sure that we can actually see the light in the logo right now. Then I'm going into the shader editor right here, click on use nodes, and I will add a light path node. Light path node. One of the properties that we can access is the glossy depth. And I'll show you exactly what it does. If I place this in the strength, you saw some things disappear. All right. And why did that disappear? Well, I'm going to show you in a second. But first I will add a color ramp. And if I switch these around, watch what happens. There's no light in the logo. So why does this happen? Well, I'm going to explain. In this material, in our normal material, we naturally have our JBL logo. And since this has roughness or glossiness, I don't know why we're conflicting the terms with each other, but since we have roughness or glossiness, this is making sure that the light is visible in this due to the glossy depth. But if we increase this, there will be no reflection in this gloss or in this rough material. There's still some light coming onto this object because it has some roughness. But if we increase this all the way to 2, or we actually make the value very white, then all the roughness will disappear and it becomes black. The light no longer works on this material. And I'll show you that if I move this around, and it's only coming into the logo. Now, of course, we don't want this material to be so black that no light is shining on it at all. So I'm going to click on this and remove this hue, saturation and value node. We do want to have some extra lighting. There's nothing wrong with that. It would be very unnatural if only the logo was being lit. But we can place it a bit farther and make sure that the logo is the one that's strongly animated, while the other one is it's kind of there, but not that much. So this is the way you do it. We can now play around with this light and make an animation out of this. So let's go to the timeline and let's make sure that we are on the first frame. The light should not be in this frame. So I'm going to place the light GXX, place it a little bit to the side, and let's see what happens. Here we want the light to enter. Maybe we don't even have to make an animation. It's going to do it by itself. No, it doesn't. Okay. So on the first one, I'm going to press I, then the light is coming in, but it should move out immediately also. So to frame 100, and I will place it over there and press I. What have we now? I'm going to make this linear as well. All right. So we have a linear animation of the logo being lit. I think it's a bit too strong, so I'm going to turn this power down just a little bit. What we can also do is perhaps bring this one over here when it's first coming in and bring this one closer out. But what I actually want to have is a bit more of a gradient. So I'm going to turn this down. I think this looks pretty cool. So I'm also going to rotate it on the Z axis just a little bit and press I on this keyframe, on this last keyframe. So now we have a pretty professional looking animation with a logo streak going on here. And perhaps what we can do to finalize this is bring in an area light and shine it from the back, not on the model, but on the plane. Something like this. maybe a bit less strong. And that's how you create a very simple animation. We simply added some lighting to the logo and we made a very small rotation animation for this headphone, which is linear and it's not that big of a deal. But if you want to come across as a professional, simply make some slow animations and have some lights move over the object, and then you'll pretty much be settled for a lot of use cases. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, click on subscribe. I also recommend checking out the Fiverr video which I made recently, and some Fiverr artists actually made some animations for this headphone, and maybe you can be inspired. In the next video we are going to make another animation and it's going to be awesome. So click here to watch that next, or watch the Fiverr video. Alright, so today we are going to make this soft looking animation. First things first, I'm going to place a camera. It's going to be right here. I will select the camera, go to 80 millimeters because that's the focal length we need. Then I'm going to scale this down, bring in a cube, and this cube will be placed right over here. It's actually quite perfect already. Then I'm going to press Shift D and bring this over to the side, Shift and X, and make sure it's going down just a little bit. And now this is going to be our second cube. I'm going to duplicate this cube once again and I will bring it towards the side. Scale it down a bit. G and X, G and Z. Maybe scale it up so that it looks a bit like this. I'm going to take this cube once again, Shift D and hold Control, bring it exactly towards this side. G and Z, let's bring it down a bit, and why not move it towards this area as well. And then I'm going to place the camera in its final position, 72 frames. I will RZ, I will RXX, I will RZ again, make sure it's in the center of the camera, press I. Then I'm going right over here because we need some more. I'm going to press Shift A, Mesh, and bring in a cylinder. The cylinder can be scaled down, and it should be scaled down even more because it should be able to fit on the cube. I'm going to give this a subdivision. Let's bring in 3 loop cuts right there. Let's press I on the top in order to scale this inwards. Shade, auto, smooth. Then I will duplicate this, Shift D, S, and scale it down so that it also fits right on here. Doesn't have to be that small, just a little bit smaller than the rest, and maybe scale it on the Z-axis in order to give it some randomization. Then of course we also need a plane for the bottom. First we're going to do the animation, then we're going to change some of these cubes to look a little bit better, and we're going to do some texturing and lighting, and then it will be done. So let's select all of this, and this is its final form. So I'm going to select the cube, press I, then select this empty, press I, press I, press I on this empty again, and once again on this final empty as well. Then right here on frame 0 I'm going to press Alt R, RX 90, something like this should work out fine. I'm going to bring it down. It fits on this table perfectly. If that's not the case, you should probably scale it down. Now I'm going to select the deepest point of the headphone model, so somewhere over there, and place it on the plane. Pivot point to 3D cursor, RX, and let's bring it down until it is sitting on this cylinder. R and X, and make sure it looks good now. Very cool. Now, perhaps we were a bit too hasty with this, because what I want to do is select this empty right here, R and Z, let's bring it inside, R and X, let's also rotate it like this, as if it's been folded in. Then I'm going to select this empty and R and X. We're going to have to play around with this, so it seems. R and Y, R and X, R and Z, just make sure everything makes sense and that it's laying down here like this, something like this. Then I will go past each empty once again, so this one, that one, the cube of course, and the other side as well. And now we have an animation on the first frame. So if we play this, already looks pretty cool. We can make some changes to it though. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to select this empty, that empty, this empty, that empty, and of course the cube. Then I will go into the graph editor. I'm going to set this to normalize so I can see every single line. This will make sure that the line is set from 0 to 1 instead of having its absolute values. So we can see every single line on one bar. It's not going to be representative for the scale. Doesn't really matter though, because we can work with it. Here I'm going to set it to individual centers. I will select everything S and X, and this will give us an extreme Bezier animation. So it's going to be slow in the beginning, then it will be fast in the middle, and then it will be slow near the end. So I'll show you what that means. Shift A, let's play this. There you go. So it's moving slow, then it's opening up, and it's slowing down near the end again. I like this original setup, but I'm going to make some tweaks in order to make it even better. So let's start with the cube. I will go to the Z location. Let's open that up, and I will make sure that the Z location is starting faster. So it's going to move up. Very good, because I want it to move fast in the beginning. Then I'm going to change the rotation for this as well. So I'll select all of these rotation animations. Make sure that we get the ones on the right, because those are actually part of the left. It's kind of weird, but we scaled it, so now it's passing through the other ones. Doesn't really matter. So we're going to take this, and I will S
I'm going to set this to bounding box center, S and Y, and this will make sure that it's faster in the beginning, like so. Maybe even more extreme, S and Y. You can see what this does with our curve, by the way. There you go, looks pretty cool. I think it's a bit too much. Something like this. There you go. So it's moving fast, we've got a rotation, but it's slowing down near the end, and I like the way it looks. Then I'm going to select this one. I think it can be moved a bit faster. I'm going to start with the left one. The C-Euler rotation is the one that we are needing. I want that one to move a bit faster, so I'm going to bring it up. Whoop. Now it's smoothly moving into place. We have no intersections visible as well. That's looking good. I'm going back into the timeline, by the way. I will select this because those two keyframes now are the same and I want to add some randomization to it. So we'll take this, go to the middle part right here, and perhaps we can rotate it on the RYY, for example. In order to give it a slight variation, press I. Then I will take this one and perhaps we can just simply do the same. So R and Y to make sure it looks a bit more special than it does right now. So we are right in the middle because we end at frame 72, 36 is the middle. And right now we have an animation. Yeah, it's doing its thing, but it can look better. So let's go to the graph editor. Let's go to the Y-Euler rotation, and we can play around with this to get any type of result that we like. But the safer option would be to simply scale this on the X-axis. That looks pretty smooth. Then I will select this one, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I think this one is a bit aggressive, so I'm going to slow that down. It's probably on the Z-Euler rotation. I want that to be slower. So I'm simply going to select this area and bring it upwards, this area and bring it downwards. And now it will be a way more gradual animation, like so. And I believe in order to fix it even better, we can take the X-axis and we're going to take this and bring it down. So that one is a bit faster. So something like so. And we really have to play around with this so it's not intersecting with each other. Yeah, that's looking fine. So something like this should do the trick. Whoop, and now it's clicking into place. Whoop. All right, that looks pretty cool. I'm going to roll with it. So that is our animation. Let's go back to the timeline. This is what it looks like. Pretty cool. You can achieve similar results simply by following the steps that I just laid out for you. First things first, I'm going to make some adjustments to these models. So I'm going into this cube and I will give it a material like so. And this is going to be the first material. Then I'm heading over into edit mode. I will select all of these lines simply by pressing on 3 and then selecting this face. Then I will click on 2. So now we are only selecting the lines, and Control B, I will bevel this. And I will give it quite some segments as well, like so. Then I will add the plus icon. New, assign. So this one has a different color now than the first one. So I'm going to do the first one first. I will go into render mode, go to the shader editor, and we need some lighting to work with in order to see what we're doing. So I'm going to bring in an HDRI. I'm going to use Quattro Quanti. I think that one is nice and wide and looks very clean. So I'm going into this cube and every color should be pastel. So I'm going to make this some type of pink. I'm going to add some more detail to this one. So I will add a noise texture. Control T, object in the vector. Let's add a bump factor in the height, normal in the normal, and then I will play around with this. And it seems like this area hasn't gotten the right material, so I'll select it and assign it. I'm going to increase the scale of this just by a little, decrease the strength by a lot. And now we get some extra detail for free, and it looks kind of, I don't know, it looks kind of candy-ish, kind of soft-ish. I like it. Then for the second material, let's auto shade this smooth. And I'm simply going to make this some gold type yellow. So increase the metallic all the way. Let's play around with the roughness until we see something we kind of like. I think this looks pretty cool. So I'm going to give this one, this next cube, an orange color. So click on new and this will be a bit more orangey, like so. I think it's already done, but we can add a bevel modifier. Bevel, let's increase the segments. Control A, apply the scale. Let's decrease the amount. Looks pretty cool, looks very nice. Now for the other two, what we can do is select this. Let's click on new, let's click on dash to isolate it. Let's add some loop cuts, Control R until we have these cubes. I'm going to click on 7, select all of the middle cubes and don't select the outer ones. I'm going to loop tools, circle, and now we have a circle. I'm going to press E and I will bring this inwards. Then I will select this entire circle right here and press Control B. First, let's apply the scale. Control B, and this will be a material. So plus, assign, Control I to select everything else, such as this one as well. So let's select all of this. Material, new, assign. So this one can be a gold color, shade to smooth. Let's make it gold again. Let's bring it over there. I see we have selected a bit too much. So this one can be the other material as well. Like this, and then for this material we can choose a bit of a bluish type like so. Let's click on dash and now it looks like this. Pretty cool, pretty easy, and let's do the same for this one. I'm going to add some loop cuts. Once again, right here, I will select the middle area, loop tools, circle. Now we have a circle. Then I'm going to press E. Let's bring this inside, and then I will add a bevel modifier. Bevel modifier. Let's increase the segments. Let's decrease how much of it this is, but it's a bit too harsh. So I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier, and now it looks like this. This is going to be one color. So I'm simply going to add a color, and it might be yellowish. And the final color will be for the plane, and that's going to be a pinkish tone. That looks very similar to the original cube that we made first. And now we have to give some metallic colors to the cylinders. So this one first, let's make it bluish. Let's increase the metallic, and the roughness can go up just a little bit. Make it shiny, but not too much. Let's select this one, and it could be goldish. So like so, goldish. Let's add it. And now it looks like this, very nice. So what I'm going to do is I will select this one, and this is the empty that has the entire headphones in it. Then I will click select hierarchy, and this will select everything underneath the hierarchy of the empty. I will press M, headphones, place it into its own collection. These are the headphones. And now I'll go into the camera, go to viewport display, passepartout. Let's increase it all the way. And now I can see what it actually looks like. Very cool, but we also need some lighting on here. So I'm going to bring in some lights. First of all, let's bring an area light right there. I'm going into Lumio, and I will place it somewhere on the back, somewhere on the side. Maybe we can rotate it around to the top and increase the strength of this. Now it looks like this. Very cool. I'm going to duplicate it, go into Lumio, press on 2. I'm also going to bring this one in the back and give it some extra light. Something like this, but it could be a lot harsher. So perhaps we can decrease the spread, increase the power a bit. It's a bit too much. I like it like this. Go into Lumio once again. Let's place it right there. Let's see what it does. Do like the logo being lit. Very nice. Then I will select all of these area lights, place them into its own collection. Headphone lights. And then I will go to light linking right here. Select the headphone lights collection. The target is the headphones itself. Add light linking. And now all the lights work on the headphones, but no longer on the outside planes. So we've got that done right now. I'm going to bring in some lighting for this as well. So let's place a light right there, somewhere over here. Let's rotate it on the x-axis. Let's make it pretty strong. I want to make sure that we have some shadows somewhere. Something like this, perhaps. Very cool. And of course, the finishing touch would be to set it to cycles, and then it will actually start to look good. Compute. Let's see what it looks like. Pretty cool, pretty awesome. And let's go over here to the timeline and do the final camera animation as well. So let's go over here. This is the final position, 72. I'm going to select the camera, press I, and we'll go to frame 1. And I will zoom this in all the way over here, and maybe even down on the Z-axis. I'm going to press I, go into the graph editor, and then I will select all of this. Let's see, where are we? We are moving on the location only, no rotations, no scale. So I'm going to lock that off. And I will select all of this, press A and dot. So let's take both of these, S and Y, and let's bring it upwards, like so. And that's it for this animation. It's actually quite simple. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to know more about Lumio, there's a link in the description. Also, I would appreciate it if you click on subscribe. And if you want to watch the next video, then I recommend clicking right here. So today we are going to make this sort of speaker animation for the headphones. So let's get started straight away. And I will start by bringing in a cylinder, a mesh cylinder. The cylinder can be scaled down, should be scaled upwards as well, because the headphone is supposed to fit on there. So let's scale this. Then let's go into edit mode. So let's select this outer edge, E and S, and let's scale this like so. E and Z, make sure that we're scaling it down. E and S, E and Z, E and S, E and Z, E and Z, E and S. Let's do something like this and make it very big. So now let's place our camera somewhere over here so that we can actually see what's going on. Let's bring the headphones down. Let's place it on this floor. Use the pivot point from the 3D cursor in order to make sure that this part is also on the plateau. Now let's go into this material mode because we're going to give this a material straight away. Let's go over here, texture, wave, texture. We want to get a wave. Control T, object in the vector, color in the base color. And then I'm going to set this to rings instead of bands, and we want this to be spherical instead of X. And now we get our beautiful looking spheres. And if you play around with the phase offset, you can already see where this is going. So I'm going to place this into the bump map, color into the height, normal into the normal, and then we will have something that is distorted a little bit because we want to fake the effect as if it's going upwards or outwards. I'm going to unplug it from the base color and actually just make it black. So now it looks like this. We already get our pretty speaker looking type of thing, and we can animate it as well. So instead of using a scene time, which unfortunately doesn't exist in the shader editor, we can use the value and make a driver out of this by typing hashtag frame, and let's do it times 100. So value into the phase offset, and now it is moving outwards. Now we can go over to the geometry nodes area. So let's go to the geometry node editor, press new, and from the group input we want to instance something on this plane. So I'm going to bring in an instance on points right here, but now we lose our original plane. So what I'm going to do is select our group input, actually make a join geometry and place it right here. Geometry into the geometry, and now we have both. We have our instance and we have our original input. So what do we want to instance? Of course, it's going to be a UV sphere. If your PC can handle it, you can also do a icosphere. Mesh into the instance, and what will we see? We will see a squashed sphere. So we're going to have to apply all the transformations, and now things should look a whole lot more natural, and these are actually UV spheres. Now, these UV spheres obviously should have a material. So Shift A, set material, and let's give this a material. I'm going to make it glass. So I'm just simply going to add a material to this, new, call it glass. I will click on this, type G, and that will automatically turn it into glass. Decrease the roughness all the way to 0.012 and IOR to 1.333, and that's water. Glass for the material right here. And of course a set shade smooth, because we don't want to see all those geometrical problems. So now let's randomize the size of this. So let's go over here and add a random value node, random value into the scale, and let's play around with these values until we see something we actually like. We need to have a minimum value, a maximum value, and that's just the way it goes. Very good, but there's not really that much of them going on right now. So what I want to do is go over to the group input, add a subdivided mesh, like right over here, and we can click on 2 maybe if you want some more. You can totally decide on that for yourself. Now what we can also do is add a set position node, add a noise texture, then add a vector math node, vector math, set it to subtract, and let's subtract 0.5, and now it's going to be a bit more on its own position. And then we can play around with the scale of this, and if you want it to be a little bit more randomized, you can do it like so. This is the way to do it. I'm not going to do that for this example, I'm just going to keep it like this. Now, we want to make sure that these are moving. So if we play this now, nothing really is happening. Let's go over to set position. Let's add a set position node right here. And then we are going to make sure that all of these instances are moving on a wave. How we're going to do it? So I'm going to add a vector math node. From this vector math, we're going to select distance. I want the first vector to be the original position. So this is data it has already saved, let's say. Then the distance can go into the offset. But of course things are, well, moving in a weird direction. So what I want to do is duplicate this, set it to multiply, and we're going to eliminate the X and Y axes because those are making sure that it's moving in the wrong direction. As you can see, if we play around with this, so if we set those to 0, then it can only go upwards. And how cool does that look already? So let's set it to 1 and let's bring it down just a little bit. Let's make sure that we can actually see something going on here. So now, in order to actually get this wavy pattern, let's add a math node. Let's set this to sine. And let's also add another math node. Let's set it to multiply. And this is going to be the amount of waves that we are seeing. So if I increase this distance value, what do you see? Well, it is waving about, and that is correct. Now, before this multiply node, I'm going to add another one, and it's going to be an add node. And if we animate this add node, then we get our cool looking wave animation. All right, so now we need to animate this. It's going to be the scene time, seconds into the value, and we can always play around with this by adding another multiply and increasing this to 3, and then it will be 3 times faster, of course, because the original seconds times 3 is going to be 3 times faster. Of course, we want this to be in the minus. So now it's moving outwards, something like this. Now, of course, can we randomize this? Yes, we can randomize this. Let's add another vector node, so multiply. Let's use a random value set to vector, value into the vector. And then I will use a noise texture as the maximum for this. As you can see, it is going quite insane. So let's play around with this and keep it subtle. Something like this. And of course, it's moving underneath the plane each time. We don't want that, so I'm going to duplicate the set position node and place it right in between here. And let's increase the Z just a little bit, so it never goes underneath the pattern. Now you will be able to see that this is practically the original scene. Of course, the HDRI was less strong and I lit this from the back, giving it a more cinematic quality. Yeah, and in that fashion I kind of animated everything. Made sure it was dark enough to hide all the mistakes and all the problems it has. And what you can also do if you want the droplets to actually be on this wave pattern, so you can make a wave pattern for this as well, because it's the exact same setup as right over here, or at least this area. So if we want to do that, let me do it real quick so you can see how it actually works. I will copy this geometry node setup right here, and I will remove the group input. I will make it a grid, and I will plug it right in there. And this grid can go right in here. And in between this grid, we are going to take all of this. Let's actually do the randomization as well for now. Let's add a set position. Multiply into the offset. Let's increase the size of our grid and the vertices it has. So yeah, as you can see, this is a wave, and now the balls are sticking to it. So you can also make an animation like this. Of course, if you increase the multiply value, it will go a lot faster. If you increase the height, it will be a higher wave, and you can change the speed right here. So you can also use this technique instead of only doing the bubbles and having this be a texture animation. For the original one, that's what I did, but of course you can also use this. The name of the game is simply place your lights, and now you have this animation where all these bubbles and things are moving upwards. And that's basically it. So click on subscribe and I'll see you in the next video. So today we are going to make this shot. It's going to be a cloud simulation. So I've already brought in the headphones right here, and I will make a plane. And in this specific case, I'm going to make the headphones slightly larger because I think it works better for the simulation. Simulations have trouble calculating when it's getting too small. So I'm going to make this a pretty long plane, something like this, because it should be able to wrap around this object. So I'm going to apply the scale, then I will go in here and subdivide it, and subdivide it perhaps 100 times. Yeah, it's going to be a lot. I know. So G and X, G and Y. What we're going to do now is simply move towards this area, like over here, Shift S, cursor to selected, and then I will bring in a UV sphere. I will scale this down. So now I'm first going to select the UV sphere, then select the plane, go into edit mode. I will select this vertex and this vertex, Control P, and that makes sure that they are connected. As we can see right here, you see a small dotted line between those two. And what will happen right now is that if I select this sphere and give it an animation, so let's say we move it on the x-axis, well, the plane is going to follow along naturally, and that's exactly what we want. Go to the sphere, press Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's make a path. So I'm going to make a path, and I will shape this path using proportional editing all the way around this model in whatever fashion we would like. So I'm going to click on this ball, go to the Constraints tab right here and select Follow Path. Select this path. Now it's going to be offset, simply because this has some form of transformation. I'm going to remove these keyframes, by the way, and I will set all of the location data to 0. And now it should be on the path. And if we move this ball, it should be moving on the path. Very good. Then we have our cloth here, and we're going to add some physics to it. So let's click on the physics tab, type cloth, and right now it has a cloth simulation. And what we want to do is go into the UV sphere, go to the constraints. Let's start from here, press I, and maybe to frame 100 or something. We're just going to move it on this path. Press I and make it linear, T, linear. And now our ball is moving, but the plane is falling down and it's not moving with the ball, even though we parented it together. So what we should do in order to solve that problem is I'm going into edit mode and I will select a couple of these, so maybe this one. And I will turn this into a vertex group. So I'm going to make a group and click on assign. Click on the cloth, then go over here. And we already made our vertex group. Then go to the physics settings. All the way down under shape we see pin group. And we're going to apply the pin group. And we're also going into field weights and turn off the gravity. And now let's see what happens. Okay, so the cloth is being pulled and we are getting a cloth simulation. Now, before we actually start to bake this, let's go in here. I'm going to increase the quality steps to 10. I might even change the preset to silk, then change the quality steps to 10. Collisions, that's important. I'm going to set the quality to 5. Object collisions should be lower. Self collisions should be turned on. Distance should be lower. And right now, I believe if we bake this, so I'm going in here, maybe give it 100 frames to bake to, and I will bake it. All right, so let's have a look. Awesome. So we might have to move our camera along towards this side. And what I find is that there's really not enough going on here. So what I'm going to do is I will, first of all, scale this up bigger. Something like this. And then I will bring in a force field, and the force will be turbulence. And I'll place the turbulence somewhere over here and increase the power. I'm going to set it to 7. Delete the bake and let's rebake. Let's click on play. Let's see what it does for us. All right, pretty cool looking. Well, it's not perfect, obviously. So you just have to bake a couple more times, and this is just the reality of cloth simulations. But as we can already see, it's starting to look good. Now, how we're going to finish this up, I'm going to add a plane. I'm going to scale this up. I'm going to bring this to the side, give it a background E and Z. Let's take this line, Control B and bevel it. Let's shade it smooth as well, and let's turn the lightness of this white upwards, because it's not maximum white. We want it to be maximum white. Cool. Let's click over here, and we have no light in the scene. And it's Eevee, which is even worse. So cycles, pick whichever one works for you. What I like to do is add another fabric texture to this fabric. And then I'm going into the UV editor and make sure that it makes sense. All right, so now we have a fabric texture on our white moving cloth. Well, the only thing left to do is simply light this product. I already explained how you can do this in a previous tutorial. I'm not going to do that for this tutorial. I am going to enable depth of field and select our object right here. Make sure that it's in focus, and the cloth can be a little bit out of focus right here, and that makes it look very cool and supreme. So the cloth is out of focus here, it's out of focus there. And I would recommend playing around with this cloth simulation, just deleting the bake a couple of times, adjusting some settings, maybe adjusting your path, maybe adjusting the speed of the ball itself, maybe have it go forwards and backwards and stuff like that. You can think of a million ways to manipulate this cloth simulation. Either way, I think it looks very cool. And if you want to add one more thing, it will be an animation for this headphone. So press I on frame 90, for example. Then we'll go back to frame 1. Let's bring this down, G and Z, R and X. Let's rotate it maybe like so, or maybe like so. I think like this is going to be fun. And press I. Then go into the graph editor, Control Tab, by the way, to move to it quicker. Go to the Z location, and I want it to be fast in the beginning. So I'm going to make sure that this is sloping upwards. Whoopa. And now it's moving. We can turn off the cloth to improve the playback speed of this. Could be slightly faster in the rotation. So it is a
X rotation, let's select that. And I'm also going to make sure it's fast in the beginning. Yeah, there you go. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you had a good time and that you learned something new. If you did, click on subscribe. I also recommend checking out the Fiverr video where I made a couple of animations for these headphones, as well as the other 2 people who made animations for this. So if you want to be inspired, check that out. Or if you want to watch the next animation, I highly recommend clicking on this video next. Thanks for watching this entire free mini course. I hope you enjoyed it, and also feel free to send me your finished work. There's an email address in the description. If you followed this all the way until the end, then I highly appreciate if you click on like and subscribe. That's entirely free and it helps me out. I've also made several solutions for Blender, such as Auto Animate and the King of Light bundle pack, and I would appreciate it if you check that out as well. The links are in the description. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.